Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow is underway, live from 6th and Peabody with EHOP Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. The Monday edition has arrived. Glad you have as well. Across the OutKick Network includes this YouTube channel. If you're streaming live, you can join Chad in the chat. If you're not, well, just search out OutKick whenever you go to YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. You can join us anytime we're live or on demand. Same for all of the great programs right here across the OutKick Network and at OutKick.com. Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hutton. Good to have you back. Busy weekend.
Yes.
We're going to get into a lot of it. Busy professionally for us, personally for us. Yeah. A lot of things happening, and we're going to talk about all of it. Excited to get into some different things throughout the show, and a great guest list today also.
No doubt. Bobby Carpenter joins us each and every Monday. We hit the college football discussion and more with him. He brings it in 20 minutes. Plus Anwar Richardson, orangebloods.com. Texas in the college football playoff. Sarkisian has, well, he's met expectations. It was a big year for the head coach of the Longhorns, and it's been a big season with a chance to go win a national title. He'll join us in hour number 2. Chad, the NFL, I'm looking at the scores yesterday. There's some good games. I'm looking at the scores yesterday. There's 3-0 halftime scores of, well, scoreless. 7-0 at one point. There's a 13-7 game in the third quarter. Low scoring. But still high drama. And there was high drama delivered in Chiefs and Bills. And rightfully so. It was the expectation. Must have game for Buffalo, trying to claw their way back into playoff contention. Meanwhile, the Chiefs are coming off of a couple of losses, and they're paired up with a Buffalo team that has always played them tough, but they've always been able to maintain the Arrowhead home field advantage and take care of business. And first, the controversy with the officiating. Yes, this is a call that was brutal. And it was awful because of the moment, right? And because of the low scoring across the league, what we're seeing offensively. And there's a wide receiver lined up in the neutral zone with a minute and a half left to play in the game. Kansas City with the football just past midfield, down by 3. They're driving, trying to go win the game against Buffalo. High drama is obtained. A Buffalo season, well, on the brink, and there's a flag. Egregious in that moment and in this season where the offenses across the league, not just at the top of the league, across the league have been really down. I don't want to see that penalty. I don't think the NFL, they won't say it, they don't want to see that thrown. But those flags have been thrown, neutral zone infractions, a lot more often this season than not. Mahomes is pissed off. So is Andy Reid. The NFL is going to look into their post-game reaction to it, where Mahomes is livid. Their video of him with Josh Allen post-game, and even Allen is saying that's the worst penalty ever. Brutal. And he's right. Buffalo needed that. But, Chad, it overshadows, that call overshadows a bigger theme about what we watched in this matchup. You've got Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes MFing the refs postgame. But the fact that the Chiefs are now pointing to officiating, that means, and I think in a larger point here, that means that while, yes, the call is awful, yes, it means that the Chiefs are coming back down to the level of the next tier of the NFL to me.
Well, when you say the call is awful, you mean the fact
the
that
moment.
It was called in that moment
Yes.
is awful?
Yes.
See, I would go on the flip side of that.
Because I've been on the sidelines and I've seen officials go up to receivers and say, hey, back up an inch.
Yeah.
After a snap.
Well, an inch?
Back up a toe.
Let's show that again. And I've seen the overhead shot of it. That line does not do justice.
Back up half a foot
His
size.
entire leg is over the line of scrimmage.
Back up half a foot. 1 foot. Well, his foot. And he's on the line.
I need Kadarius Toney to not line up that far off sides when
fair.
that's as close as a receiver can get to the football and seeing it.
Again,
that
is
an egregious
yes.
error by him. Now, what I'd like to see, and I know what Patrick Mahomes is saying. Usually you're warned about that. He was never warned. Now, here's the only way that I would remotely agree with Patrick Mahomes, and I've not gone back and watched every snap Kadarius Toney was in the game to see this. If he lined up a full foot in front of the line of scrimmage on almost every play, and the officials did not once warn him and tell him to back up at all, then I've got a problem with that flag being thrown.
Well,
the way Mahomes is saying.
He's not in front of the line. He's on the line, which, again, neutral zone. Flag, sure. A minute and a half left. And is Andy Reid correct where normally that's a warning? Yes. I've seen it happen in practice. In officials going up to assistant coaches or looking back when they stand, the line judge turns around and says, make sure he's off the line next. He'll say that to the sideline. I've seen it happen across the league. Now look, they are calling more of these, though, this year. They have made this a point of emphasis.
I want to see this photo again. I can argue that the Bills' defensive end is close to the neutral zone with his helmet. But what Kadarius Toney's doing, he's so far over.
He's on the football.
Into it. He's on the football, over it with his entire torso. His foot is in front of it. I mean, he's almost on the Bills' side of the field. That's a really dumb play by Kadarius Toney.
If you're saying the defensive end is almost on it, the blue line, he's standing on the blue line, which means he's in the neutral zone.
We need the overhead shot, too, that shows that he is fully in front of the football.
Well, this is the line that the ref is looking at. They don't have the overhead shot.
It's a terrible move by Toney. He's an idiot. I don't want to take responsibility away from the player, and I feel like everyone has done that because Mahomes threw a fit. But what Mahomes should be throwing a fit on is, dude, you're 5 feet from the football. You're looking right on it. You can't line up over the line and even put that into jeopardy late in the game like that when that happens. Again, the only thing that I'll listen to is if someone can go back and show me where he did this all game and did not once get warned. Now, if he was onside all game and then egregiously goes into the neutral zone on this one play where that linesman that throws it can't even see the ball, and that's why he threw it, I don't think Mahomes has an argument here. It sucks. It does suck for the game that play didn't count because it was remarkable. But it's the right call. It's a penalty. And I think that Mahomes and everyone else is ignoring the fact that their guy did something really stupid. And that is line up in a spot where, again, he's not even on the far end away from it. He is close to the football, looking right at it, and is clearly in the neutral zone as the ball is snapped.
A warning from the official, I want to make this clear, is not required. But how often do you see a receiver glance over at an official and they get a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and they tell them, without throwing the flag, they tell them if they're in the neutral zone or not? They're not doing that for the defense, by the way.
Again, if he got away with this all game and he didn't get one warning and they decided to flag it with a minute left in that moment, I'd have a problem with that. But I also don't think that the officials have to warn the guy when they're that far over.
They don't.
I mean, his full foot and leg is in front of the football, not just on it. In front of the football. His body is blocking the ball where the linesman can't even see the snap. That's a Kadarius Toney problem.
Sure, it is. But in a game with a minute 25 left, and if there's other instances where, again, they've let it go, and I agree with what the players are saying, where they do let it go on the offensive side. They'll glance over, and then in the play as the receiver's going back to the huddle, if there's in some cases, the receiver looks to see if they're on the line. They want the visual confirmation because they're almost trying, and it could be a run play. They're trying to have the defensive back or the safety think that it's a pass because the receiver wants to not give the tell anytime it's a pass. That's the only time they look for it. But in this case, Chad, and knowing that this is a penalty that was rarely thrown, but has been thrown more often than we've seen in recent years this season. It is over. This controversy is overshadowing what we're seeing in this game because specifically with the Chiefs, they're coming back down to earth a bit. Arrowhead is no longer the place where you go and you lose. We've seen that a handful of times now. Buffalo, meanwhile, wins a close game. And they do it in a game against Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs where they're bitching and moaning about this call. And again, they're doing it because of what the result was. I get it. It's a big moment. They turned the football over 3 times. Their receivers are dropping passes. They're scoring 17 points. We're not seeing the type of offense we've seen from the Kansas City Chiefs on a regular basis. And I think that's a broad and larger point to what the result ends up being that's overshadowed by the foot of Toney. And do they go on to win the game if he's 1 foot behind the line? Yeah. I mean, that play worked. But they lost the game not just because of this one call, because they didn't finish drives or they turned the football over and gave away possessions in other big moments throughout the football game itself. And they've been doing that as of late, and more times than not, with the receiving core that they decided to go with compared to the last 3, 4, 5 years where they've been on an incredible run. And they're doing it at times where they fail to score 20 points for the 5th time in the last 6 games. Kansas City doesn't reach 20 points.
Yeah,
that to me is the bigger result of what we saw in the Buffalo-Kansas City matchup.
Well, here's the deal. Kadarius Toney lining up like he's a defensive end is yet another example of the Chiefs receivers failing them. The drop passes you mentioned also, the stupidity of that play. This guy's not a smart football player. He's done a lot of dumb things. He's had bad drops for them. This is a recurring issue with Kadarius Toney, so I'm not going to give him the benefit of the doubt on that. Here's the craziest part of this for me is that Buffalo just went to Kansas City. They're now 3-0 with Josh Allen in the regular season at Arrowhead, and I'm not coming away from that game thinking Buffalo's figured it out. That's how mediocre the Chiefs look right now. This should be a huge moment, and it is. It's an enormous win for Buffalo, and one, quite frankly, they probably really had to have at this point to get to 7-6. But, Hutton, I'm not watching that Buffalo win and coming away from that thinking great things about the Bills. I'm thinking, man, the Chiefs look really normal. They don't look awful or anything. They just look really normal.
Yeah, that's it.
And I thought by now, we're into December, well into December. I thought they'd have it figured out offensively, but their receivers are not good. This is a team that's got, when Pacheco is healthy, which he wasn't yesterday, a decent running game, and they've got Patrick Mahomes, who may be the greatest quarterback in the league, with Travis Kelce, who is a whiz at making plays out of nothing, and we saw that on the play that was called back yesterday, and a bunch of stiffs at wide receiver. And they got a defense that's good for once. But that leads to an above-average team, and not one that right now I could see honestly going on some sort of run in the playoffs. I mean, that's what's crazy to me, is that I thought that if Buffalo went to Arrowhead and won this game and reaffirmed that they are in control of their own destiny, we'd be talking about the greatness of Buffalo figuring it out, and now they're going to move on to big things. And I'm just left with even more questions coming out of this game because I don't think Buffalo was great either.
Well, but we had Steve Tasker on last week, and the one thing that he said they had to prove is that they could win a close game. They did that here. Yeah. They did that here. They got stops. Their defense turned the football over, and they also see that they can go to Arrowhead and win. I think that's the other thing. Teams can do that. I don't think Kansas City is built to win on the road in the postseason. We've never seen Patrick Mahomes play on the road in the postseason. Is he the wizard that can go win games single-handedly? Yes. Can he go win 4 straight single-handedly? No. Because in the Super Bowl, they actually ran the football to win this past year. And I only point to this. This is not just some one-game blip. This is they're stacking this in a consistent fashion in a dynasty run that doesn't look like it's continuing that much further down the road. It could. They could go get the next great receiver in the draft. They have to. But, Chad, this isn't the explosive Chiefs offense. This is a defensive-minded team. Mahomes has receivers that don't help him, and it's been going on since week 1. The league wants you to think that the scoring's down because their backup quarterback's playing. Scoring's down because scoring's down with the elite quarterbacks not putting up points.
You want to see an elite offense, an explosive offense? watch Monday Night Football tonight. They got a guy named Tyreek Hill that Chiefs fans know plenty about. That's an explosive offense.
Yeah, but
I'm talking about the common denominator here. You know, they won a Super Bowl without Tyreek Hill, but you're seeing the aftermath of not having that type of playmaker at receiver more and more with the Chiefs this year on offense. I look around the AFC, and I guess it's Miami, and I really like Miami's offense, but they haven't beaten anyone.
I think it's Baltimore.
That's really good. Baltimore's another good one, but I watched Baltimore yesterday, and I come away unimpressed.
Well, they're plus
they found a way to win.
They're plus 137 in point differential. That's insane.
Yeah.
So if you look at the points scored this year, they can do that.
That's become a really bad division, and that's crazy to me because of quarterback injury and other things. But I look at the Cleveland Browns and what they're able to do, and they're right there in it, and think, man, that has become a bad division, and I didn't see that coming into the season.
And all of the opponents remaining for Baltimore are above 500 now. But they get the punt return. They win the game. That's a big win for Baltimore.
That was a hell of a punt return, too.
Yes.
That was one thing that was quite impressive about the Ravens' performance yesterday. That was bouncing off tacklers, tight-roping the sideline. That was an incredible punt return.
I think we both have an issue with the Heisman Trophy not going to a certain player, but Chad noticed this one player before anyone, really, and said to watch out because he was going to defy the odds in Vegas preseason. Michael Penix Jr. didn't win it. Jaden Daniels did. We'll discuss that and more. Bobby Carpenter next.
Victoria's Secret used to be sexy. On that note, let's talk about Victoria's Secret because we continually talk about saving women's spaces, their sports leagues, their locker rooms, but we've never actually talked about their dressing rooms in retail stores. Well, now we also are getting the opportunity to talk about that one because the other day, according to an article by Newsweek, a trans woman started complaining on social media that Victoria's Secret mistreated them because they wanted to use a dressing room in one of their stores. So the trans person tweeted out this, quote, "I was trying to find a cute bra at Victoria's Secret, and they made me wait until every cis woman left the dressing rooms before I could go into one of them. They even made other cis women wait until I had my turn, so no cis woman would have to be in any of the 5 other rooms." Obviously, she's meeting at the same time. So let's just examine this for what it's worth. A biological man, right, was trying on a cute bra. Why? I don't know, because if you were to see the picture of this trans person, there's nothing for the bra to cover, that I can tell at least. I'm not sure why you'd want to wear a bra because as a woman, I can tell you that bras are not comfortable and no woman looks forward to wearing a bra. So it's very puzzling why someone would go to all of the trouble to try to find a cute bra. But that's just me talking. Anyways, they were forced to wait by sales associates in order to, of course, protect the privacy of all the other actual women who are using the same space. And to which I say, cry me a river, right? There are so many bigger problems in this world. This does not seem like one of them that should necessarily be addressed or made all that important. Also, hats off to these sales associates, by the way, because it was only a matter of time before Victoria's Secret had to respond to this trans person on X saying this: "We're sorry to hear about your experience in our store, and we'd love to speak with you directly." And then when they were asked about the incident, Victoria's Secret told Newsweek via email, quote, "We are committed to ensuring a great experience for our customers, so we always welcome feedback. Our associates are focused on providing exceptional customer service, especially during this busy shopping season." So here's how I interpreted all of this. When I read this generic response, first and foremost, to the trans person on X, and then Victoria's Secret's very cut and dry corporate explanation to Newsweek, I actually felt kind of convinced that Victoria's Secret may have finally learned their lesson. Because after abandoning their foundational values and going woke several years ago, that is, of course, we've already talked about this on the show several times, when they used to use the hottest women in the world to model and advertise their lingerie. And then they turned to using body-inclusive, plus-size models, also biological men. Victoria's Secret went broke. Just looking at this year alone, in quarter 3, they're down $71 million. So clearly, they're absolutely tanking. So the company has already said it's going to reverse course, get back to sexy, but now these responses tell me that they might actually mean it. I mean, the reply on X to the trans person was very generic. Like any person would probably get complaining for any reason to any company online. Like, for example, if I'm going to complain to Delta Airlines for not giving me a great experience, sounds very similar to what they would tell me.
Sixth and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us. Hot Mike with Hutton Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Chad, good weekend?
Good weekend. Pretty low-key, but good.
Same.
Very sore today because I took had a little, not a team party, I would say, but like half the team could show to a trampoline park with the girls, and I really wore myself out playing trampoline dodgeball against a bunch of 11-year-old boys at one point, and got into quite the intense staring contest with one maybe 13-year-old boy that was trying to take me out. By the time I got my shot, I took it, and I hit. Direct hit.
Did he threaten you the way that one guy apparently went after John Morant, allegedly, on the basketball court?
No, wasn't quite to that level. I'm not. There's no pending charges based on this dodgeball game. Just got a little intense.
Dodgeball, I'm sure for Bobby Carpenter back in the day was always
if Bobby got into some dodgeball today, I'm sure it's intense too.
No doubt. Bobby Carpenter joins us on Hot Mike. Good to see you, Bobby. Hope things are well.
It's good to see you guys. I appreciate it. You know, my dodgeball days are mostly in the rearview mirror. I only get about 30 to 40 throws on my shoulder on any given day, so I try to save those and ration them out. If I ever have to rear back and go, it's usually not going to end up very well for me by the next day. I'll be incapacitated and not be able to really work out or anything for the next 3 or 4 days.
So, did the guy that should have won the Heisman Trophy win the Heisman Trophy in your mind?
I don't know. I mean,
what a year, right?
Yeah, it was a unique year. I think it was Bo Nix's to lose heading into the final game of the season, the conference championship weekend. He obviously, they played poorly, but I don't think he didn't play well enough for them to win, and he obviously didn't hoist the Pac-12 championship trophy. He does that, he probably wins it. If Michael Penix over the last half of the season played a lot more like he did in the first half, then I think he wins it, given what you saw from him in the Pac-12 championship game. But I think people kind of looked around and it was like, okay, there was no elite player on an elite team that consistently carried their team to a CFP berth or did as much as they possibly could with the talent around them. And so then I think you look around, you start looking at numbers, and Jaden Daniels ultimately won it. And so I think as you see that, it's a little bit different. There's other years where this could have been the case. I don't think he was penalized for not having his team in the conference championship or potentially making the CFP, just due to the fact that other guys really didn't elevate their game and elevate their teams around them consistently enough. And so while there are other guys in the mix, I think you look at Daniels and what he did this year, which he put on a show, he put on a spectacle, and his team was very good. They just were not in that elite category. I would have loved to have seen what he could do had he finished the Alabama game. But he obviously gets nicked up, gets a concussion, I believe, or they put him in protocol and he's done. I think if he gets that win, then I think there's probably less question around it, because then he's got more of a signature win ultimately on his resume. But he played well enough to win it this year, and I don't think anybody else really did enough to outpace him, to bring home the trophy.
The quarterbacks there, Bobby, specifically, but also there are several more that transfer and then flourish. I see the three that are in New York, and I'm thinking, if I'm a coach, how do I not take advantage of the skill set of said player that left the program and immediately did something better. Not just better, but was the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy in Bo Nix's case with 3 weeks to play in the college football season. I don't care the dynamic or the background of the head coach who was a defensive-minded head coach at Auburn. How do you not get that same level of play from a legacy player, a third-generation legacy player in Bo Nix, where his grandfather and his father played at Auburn, and he goes to Oregon, and he's a Heisman finalist?
I think there's a couple of things. First of all, maybe whether it's the head coach, offensive staff, whoever, like maybe they're just not that good of a coach. Like that's number one, most logical solution. Everybody acts like just because you have a big job and a big title makes you innovative or good. I've been around plenty of coaches who could only coach to systems they've been brought up in.
Yeah.
They have little to no innovation on their own, given the fact that they get a unique player with unique talents or something different than they had before, they're not able to tailor a system to what that guy does well. So I think that can be part of it. I think in Bo Nix's case, what also could be part of it is the fact that, there was an immense amount of pressure on him there, and we would see really good Bo, and then we'd see some bad Bo, and there was just inconsistencies. It wasn't the fact that he wasn't any good at Auburn. It's the fact that he just wasn't good on a week in and week out basis. So there's that element of it.
But he was like Devin Leary at Auburn, though.
Yeah.
He was really good his freshman year,
You know what
and
I mean?
then
No,
it
like,
tapered off. There were some coaching changes and things that led to that, too. But Jaden Daniels, I mean, we want to talk
another
about
example. Michael Penix Jr.
Jaden Daniels was a running back playing quarterback at Arizona State.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's a great example of just someone who improved a lot over the course of his career.
he improved a lot, but he also had people can say what they want about Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly's a really good football coach, especially on the offensive side. And so then he ultimately had stability and a good offensive coach to be able to get that done. Michael Penix Jr. is a little bit of a unique situation because he was good at Indiana. He just had a lot of injuries. He led them to the best season that they had, and just got injured. And then you put talent around him and maybe even in a better offensive system. But here's the one thing all of those guys had in common is we're looking at them now through the prism of 5 or 6 years of playing college football as well. So I'm not saying that those guys would have all gotten to the place that they're at in their former school with their former system, but they also have seen a heck of a lot of football by this point. They've played in a ton of games. They played in different systems, and maybe they had someone who is more uniquely equipped to be able to handle their talent and put them in a better position, but they also had played a lot of football. And everybody looks at the transfer portal as this silver bullet. You look at these 3 guys. Joe Burrow is another, famous example. You look at even Justin Fields at Ohio State. All of these guys that transferred, they were all there 2 years. I think being in that system for 2 years and being able to adapt and become comfortable is a lot different than a guy trying to come in 1 year, turn all the fortunes around of himself and his whole organization, his team, over a 12-month period, because that's a heavy, heavy load.
Well, in saying that, how does that even emphasize more the job that was done at Alabama with Milroe, who doesn't have a lot of experience, was benched. They look awful offensively. You have Tommy Rees coming in, a new play caller. You've got his quarterback from the previous year who transferred in, and they go back to Milroe, and they are now in the college football playoff.
And that's a situation example. We look at Tommy Rees. I'm sure Nick Saban was involved as well, where we start Milroe. He looks really bad. We bench Milroe. The other guys don't look any better, whether it's Tyler Buckner or Ty Simpson. Neither one of them look good. We come back to Milroe. I was like, he doesn't look that great. What does he do well? What can we do well as a team? Where can we improve? And then they just slowly start going to work. And you ultimately see that team get better and better and better and better on the offensive side of the ball. And they give Milroe more confidence. They slowly start to grow the playbook. And they didn't ask him to go out there and be Bryce Young, because you know what? He's a lot different than Bryce Young. He's got a different skill set, and he is definitely not as experienced. And so they grew it. And finally, you see a guy who's playing really good football at the end of the year because you grew with him. Everybody gets impatient and they focus on what guys can't do. And I've heard Nick Saban talk about this. Bill Belichick talks, all good coaches. If you're going to focus on what your guys can't do, show me a player that you can have. Everybody is going to have limitations in some aspect of their game. Let's lean into what the guy's really good at and areas that we can improve, and then do that. And you saw Alabama do that, not only with their quarterback position, but also with their entire team. And that's why they became one of the most improved teams over the regular season in college football.
Former Buckeyes quarterback Kyle McCord and receiver Julian Fleming reportedly visiting Lincoln, Nebraska to talk with Matt Rule about becoming a Cornhusker. My question on Kyle McCord, Bobby, just how good is he as a quarterback? Is that someone that drastically changes the fate of Nebraska football in year 2 for Matt Rule? What kind of talent is Kyle McCord, having seen him right there in Columbus this past year?
I think it would be a substantial upgrade from their quarterback play, which would be a good thing for Matt Rule in Nebraska. Matt Rule's a good offensive mind and a sound coach. So I think he'll put Kyle in position to have success, not all that different than what Ryan was able to do at Ohio State. I mean, Kyle has some physical limitations. He's not the most athletic guy in the world. You know, he's got a good arm. He sees the field pretty well. But you're going to have to kind of build your system around him and make sure that you're not asking him to go be something that he's not. And if you do that and you get some good receivers around him, I think you'll see a lot of what you saw at Ohio State. But if you ask him to be something that he hasn't been, or try to, saddle up and just carry a team like Jaden Daniels, you're not going to be able to see a guy that's going to have a whole lot of success.
From a fan perspective, it's easy just to say, just pay whatever is necessary to go get this guy, right? If you're a Husker fan right now, I'm sure you're thinking, I'll pitch in some money. If it costs $3 million to get a great quarterback that's going to win us 2 more games, let's do it. But in terms of programs out there and how they have to balance this, Juice Wells is a good example. Juice Wells from South Carolina right now, the number 1 receiver on the market. He's going to get a lot of money from somewhere. There's also reports out that Tennessee's no longer in the mix, and one of the reasons could be that while Tennessee's collective could afford him, it's not worth throwing out of balance the chemistry of the team, in that what they would pay him would be more than everyone but the quarterback is making on the team currently, and they don't want to have to give everyone else raises on the team. This is another unintended consequence of NIL, right? And I know something, Bobby, that coaches see as a potential problem. What do you make of that with NIL causing disruptions in the locker room? Maybe not with every team, but with certain teams across college football.
Well, I think what you're seeing right there, first of all, it's a little bit like the salary cap where Tennessee may have the money, but how are you going to allocate those resources? Because if you spend it now, those are going to be less dollars you have, obviously, for retaining other players. If someone else says, hey, we'll pretend like tampering doesn't exist, but that wasn't planning on getting in the portal, but all of a sudden I got offered $250,000 more dollars, you might need to take some of that money and then reallocate it over there. So you don't want to necessarily just dump it all out. And then if you're going to bring some guy in who everybody knows is a hired gun and getting paid a ton, you better make sure that certainly what this guy is bringing to the table, not just as far as his ability on the field, but what type of dude is he? Because if he's going to be the alpha and he's going to be the guy that's getting all that, he'd better make sure that he is. And you better make sure that he's a good dude and that everybody likes him and that they respect him and that he's a hard worker. Because if not, like you were saying, it will drastically throw out of bounds all of the balance. Because if I'm a guy that's been working there and doing everything that I need to do to get on the field, and you're going to bring someone else in and pay him twice as much, and then all of a sudden he's not really that much better than me, you're thinking, well, this is just messed up. Is it because I just didn't have another offer? It's because I wasn't in the portal, so I've been here doing everything the right way. And so it's a very, very fine balance, man. This is far more an art than a science, and you don't want to erode your culture. And if you're Tennessee, you finally feel like, hey, we've had a couple of good years. Let's see if we can continue to turn this thing the right way and have some success.
Bobby Carpenter, our guest, Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. So, Bobby, final couple minutes here. We've got the college football playoff expanding next year. And the first round on campus matchups, those will be played December 20th, a Friday. That's when the opening are 20th and 21st. So we're just around the corner, 9 days away a year from now in advance. What does that do to the rest of the bowl season in your mind? The emphasis on whatever else we're talking about?
Well, it's kind of like what it is now. You're just going to sprinkle in some more big moments. So you'll have some appetizers leading through the day and other stuff. I mean, guys, let's be honest. You're sitting here and you could pick out these bowls in different cities and they all have their sponsor names on them and everything else. And, I was joking with Rick Neuheisel this morning. I mean, you need something to get you through the holidays to sit down and watch some football. So you have to avoid maybe hard conversations with your family or any unwanted interactions. So you're going to sit there and you're going to watch. So I don't think that it really diminishes the other ones anymore. If anything, by maybe plop in some at the beginning, middle, and end, and you kind of cluster the other games around it. Guys, I don't know about you, but when I sit down to watch football for a day, if there's a game on at noon and there's a great game on at 8, I'm probably watching all the way through the day as long as there's something compelling about each game to watch.
Yeah, I just from the bowls, from the actual business of it too, the sponsorships. I am curious, the bowls that want to get in a rotation, right? Like the Nashville's going to get a dome in 2027. Music City Bowl could be one of the host sites for maybe a quarterfinal, semifinal, whatever, what have you. I'm curious about the sponsorship dollars for the other tier of games where there are millions spent. And I don't know how that affects the business of the bowl games. I would love the bowls to be reduced, by the way. 80-some-odd teams is whatever, but we'll see how it goes. Hey.
You don't want 5 and 7 teams playing in bowl games?
Well,
is that not?
Yeah. Let's get it up to 100. Let's make it like the NCAA basketball tournament.
I get it. I'm also I like football, so I don't really care. But the business part of it, they are going to have to work out because that money's going to start dwindling.
I like football, but I don't. I mean,
it should still be a reward. I get it.
Yeah.
You should have to go 6 and 6.
Yeah. Hey,
I will say this though: the one thing I'll have to see the ratings and how it looks. I mean, we always laughed about the Pro Bowl for all those years, but I'm like,
the ratings are up.
Put something in for a 4-hour time slot that's going to draw 6 million, 8 million people. I'm not saying these bowl games draw that. But if you have something that can draw 1 million or 2 people on January or December 27th in the middle of the day, like people will put dollars behind it because there's nowhere else to get it.
Bobby Carpenter, you can find him, SiriusXM Channel 84 at BCarp3 on social. Bobby, thank you. We're back with more on Hot Mic.
Hey, here's a feel-good story. You ready? And this needs to be talked about more. Lost in all of the, hey man, inspire change, Whitey's bad of the NFL. There are folks in the NFL that are, great dudes. The Carolina Panthers have a player named Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst is doing something that everybody in sports should do. Yeah, I know everybody in sports should try to be a rapper. Yeah, I know like Von Miller, everyone in sports should get their side piece to not frickin' talk about your indiscretions. Yeah, I know everybody in the NFL as a wide receiver has to act like a damn idiot. I get all that. I do, I swear. But Hayden Hurst, he ain't like that. Hayden Hurst is trying to shed light on veterans with suicide and suicide prevention. That's a good thing. No, it's a really good thing. Suicide's a major issue, and it's only going to get worse. I'm going to tell you right now, this is a separate issue, but lack of parenting. Do whatever you want leads to suicide. People want direction. People want purpose. People want guardrails. People don't want to be left free. They get depressed. They get depressed if you don't have anybody giving you direction, and that's the society of parents that we're living in. Suicide rates among teenagers are at all-time high, and I hate to say this, but they're only going to go higher. I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but that's what's going to happen. When you have a lack of parenting, when you let kids run free, drugs, alcohol, whatever they want in our current society are actually sometimes made available by idiot parents. I had a friend who let his kid drink in my house, and I'm like, you're an idiot. I love him. It's one of my best friends, but you're an idiot. It ain't cool. It ain't smart. It ain't fun. It's stupid. I can't even imagine my kids asking me to do that in our house. But anyway, that's parenting. That's where parenting is headed. But when you go overseas and you are in a war, and that war involves killing, you killing somebody, you seeing devastation, you seeing what a bomb can do to a town, the horrific things that our veterans have seen and had to do. Of course, that comes home with you. What do you think you do? You flip a switch, you come home, and you never think about it. Hell, I think about things that I did 10 years ago that weren't even bad. 20 years ago. Like, why did I do that? That's stupid. I mean, the only perfect people, as we know, are writers, media guys. They're the only ones. They're the only ones that are absolutely perfect. Even when they have affairs, even when they do stupid stuff, they write it off as, well, I was figuring life out. We, as the rest of us don't have that same grace. And veterans come home and they're like, oh, man. Can you imagine? Let me just give you a scenario. Let's just say you are in charge of taking a hill and you and your guys gunned down 50 people. You think that just leaves you? You think that just goes away when you come back to a nation that hates you, that doesn't respect you, that doesn't help you, that treats illegal immigrants better than you? Hell no.
I'm Mike with Hutton Withrow across the OutKick network. Chad right now is in the chat on YouTube. If you're listening to this great radio partner, we say thank you.
Chat's going great right now.
How's Royce doing today?
Royce is not. Don't even speak his name into existence because, knock on wood, this is a strong wood that we have here at this desk too. Knock on wood, Royce has not made an appearance in the chat in a while. Most controversial thing said in the chat so far was, I believe, by Jan, who is claiming that Jaden Daniels... It's not
Jan, he's Jan now.
Jan is very anti-SEC and that it's overrated. He is claiming that Jaden Daniels did not improve from his freshman year at Arizona State until now, that basically he's just feasted on a weaker SEC as opposed to the Pac-12 when he was at Arizona State. How does a mediocre to below quarterback get that much better when he goes from Arizona State to LSU?
The better.
I said, Jan, players are allowed to grow and improve from freshman year until the end of your college career.
He absolutely did.
And he said, yes, they are, but he has not improved. So
wow.
Someone else is saying that Jaden Daniels absolutely deserved the Heisman because they are below 500 if he's not their quarterback. And he single-handedly got them to 9-3. So I threw out the question, would LSU have been 9-3 if Bo Nix was their quarterback? Because my answer is absolutely yes. Maybe even better.
I would say no, because they've been better.
Could have been 10-2. They beat Ole Miss with Bo Nix, is what we're saying.
They beat Florida State.
Possibly.
I mean, they're in that game in the second half.
These are the great debates of the Heisman Trophy every year. Got to get into the 30 for 32, which really pissed me off.
Okay.
The 97 Heisman race. I've got to.
Let's dive into that in a second.
I've got a rant later. I'm going to save it for later for our alphas and betas of the week.
Okay.
But I'm going to give a big old beta to the 30 for 30 production of how that was done for the 97 Heisman Trophy race.
Right now, OutKick Store, it's playing on a new field. That's right. The new OutKick Store just launched, and to celebrate, we're offering a buy one, get one 50% off deal for a limited time. You can find our favorite polos, T-shirts, and more when you visit shop.outkick.com and score 50% off. All you got to do, visit shop.outkick.com, and the items in your cart will be automatically given the 50% off discount on the buy one, get one 50 off. And who knows, the items as they arrive at your home possibly folded by one Chad Withrow, who is a professional polo Ralph. He says Ralph Lauren. I say Ralph Lauren. That was his gig. He knows how to fold proper polo shirts, and maybe you get that with the OutKick shirts.
I'm always looking for extra money around the holidays, so if OutKick wants to pay me extra to personally fold your shirt order, and either, it's probably going to make it worth less if I sign it, but you can have like a stamp of approval, certification of authenticity that Chad Withrow did in fact fold this polo shirt for you, then send it off.
We will send in like portions of the handwritten letters that Clay receives to our location here.
That's perfect.
Yeah, you'll have.
I'll ask the question in the chat. Would you pay $5 extra that goes directly to me for me to hand fold your shirt the way I did from 2000 to 2002
for the price
at
of a
the Polo Ralph Lauren factory outlet store in Lebanon? If you'd like that type of just the hand quality of the fold, then let me know, and I'll gladly make more money to do that.
So Jan in the chat is saying that Jaden Daniels is the same quarterback that he was.
Jan is also
early.
now saying I'm misquoting him, which I'm not. In terms of he said he hasn't improved, that he just got better when he went to LSU.
But where we do agree, and maybe again we're also just putting words in his mouth here, but I'm headed down your path too, Chad. Where we do agree is while he had a great year, there was another quarterback that we would have voted for number one in the Heisman vote, and one that I was hoping we would have seen win the Heisman Trophy Saturday.
Quite frankly, I don't understand how it was not a slam dunk that Michael Penix Jr. was the Heisman Trophy winner. I don't get it. And I'm tired of trying to figure out the Heisman voting process and how they come to these conclusions. And I want to make this just like last Monday, not a knock on the winner, Jaden Daniels. Just like I tried to make it not anti-Alabama, who had a great season and a great win for the SEC championship, right? It was more pro-FSU. Let me go pro-Michael Penix Jr. here. Let's start with the stats because everyone wants to point at the stats. Jaden Daniels, this is passing stats. 3,812 yards, 40 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, a QBR of 95.7. Very good. Michael Penix Jr. had 4,218 yards, 33 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, 83.4 QBR. Michael Penix Jr. also went 13-0, where Jaden Daniels went 9-3 at LSU. The difference between the two players is Michael Penix Jr. rushed for minus 26 yards, and Jaden Daniels rushed for over 1,000 and 10 more touchdowns, accounting for 50 overall. I'm not going to get into a statistical argument because Jaden Daniels had better stats because he was a running quarterback. Michael Penix Jr. is a straight pocket passer with expert precision that ran a very complex Kalen DeBoer offense like a Swiss watch. That thing was ticking perfectly at all times. He was on time. He was ready to go. He was the one to orchestrate that offense. I will say this and be really clear about it. I don't think Jaden Daniels could run the Washington offense the way Michael Penix Jr. did. Do I think that Michael Penix Jr. could put up really good numbers in Brian Kelly's offense? Yes. Is he going to put up the rushing numbers? No. Jaden Daniels is a better rusher. So if you want just someone who's a better rusher at quarterback to win the Heisman, okay. Jaden Daniels has superior stats. But I see the Heisman Trophy as more than just a statistics award. Stats matter. Absolutely. What you've done on the field and your stats should matter and factor into the Heisman Trophy. But it's also something that it needs to be a story generator. You need to have Heisman moments. You need to be, I think, on a good team. Hey, I don't think Paul Hornung in 1956 had any business winning the Heisman Trophy at 2-8 over Johnny Majors in Tennessee. Another screw job for Tennessee for the Heisman Trophy, by the way. And I'm not saying that Jaden Daniels is some loser because he was on an LSU team that went 9-3. He's not. But he's not 13-0. And while I don't want to make this a popularity contest of just give it to the best player on the best team in college football and be done with it, I don't think it's that kind of award. I think it's a hodgepodge of all of it. I think having Heisman moments and being a great story and being on an undefeated team and having great stats, all of those things matter. And you got to factor it in. Whatever your ratio is each year, that's dependent on you as a voter. I'm just telling you that when I look at those 4 finalists and I see that Penix Jr. was great against Oregon, not once but twice, and 2-0 against Bo Nix, and I see their team is undefeated, and I see he's got more passing yards and some better passing stats than Jaden Daniels, I put all of it together and I say, that's a no-brainer Heisman Trophy winner. But instead, while the vote was the closest it's been since 2018, it goes to Jaden Daniels. Make it make sense. I can't when it comes to the Heisman Trophy. Hutton, I thought this was going to be a slam dunk. I know Vegas disagreed, and they were right. But if I have a Heisman vote, it's Michael Penix Jr. winning the Heisman Trophy this year.
I agree with that. The slam dunk for me, though, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago now, was Bo Nix. I thought it was going to be a slam dunk for him. The Heisman vote, primarily, you mentioned the popularity contest. I don't know how popular this 4-pack was this year, right? That's why it didn't go to the popular vote. It still went to the groupthink vote, though. And there was a big media push for Jaden Daniels on the weekend where he didn't play last weekend.
Yeah.
There was on social. And if you have a vote and your vote's due, well, you're going Jaden Daniels. And you're right. You mentioned the stats. In many cases, I don't think the voters, by and large, are great guys who actually put in the time, like the hardcore fans would. I don't know how many of the voters are really, truly college football fans. They're fans of region or they're fans of the team they're covering.
In a weird way, this is what bothers me, too, is how it's constantly a moving target year to year. Going back to the 97 Heisman Trophy, watching the 30 for 30, a big difference was everyone watched Ohio State, Michigan, and Charles Woodson have a great game and a great Michigan win to go undefeated on the final Saturday of the season. And about 1/15 of that audience watched Peyton Manning put up over 500 yards passing in a shootout win over Tim Couch in Kentucky. Also a great performance going into the Heisman Trophy, but not as many people watched it. Well, now I try to apply that logic to the final weekend, this past weekend. Michael Penix Jr. on Friday night is in an exclusive window, putting up great numbers and having great moments against Oregon, winning a Pac-12 title. And Hutton's right. All I see on social media is a push from everyone in the South that covers the SEC and college football arguing that Jaden Daniels is the clear-cut Heisman Trophy winner. What do I see on Saturday on social media during the SEC championship game? Hey, great game happening here. Maybe Alabama's going to win, and Jaden Daniels should be the Heisman Trophy winner in a game he didn't play in. And that was the publicity for him all weekend. I don't get it. I think not a knock at Jaden Daniels, who's a great player. I think Michael Penix Jr. should have won. And hats off to him for the suit with the inseam on the inside of the jacket featuring every name of every player and staffer on Washington's team. Great touch, great young guy. Wish he would have won the Heisman. He would have been a terrific representative.
That will look great in a trophy case, and you'll have the
Heisman Trophy would have looked better in the trophy case.
That's true.
But yes, that jacket
will look good too.
But for the season
and the recruits walking by and whatever they ended up doing. Some of the quarterbacks we'll discuss have trophies, some don't. Some are vying for the opportunity. Either way, Terrell Owens would cry if these guys were his quarterback.
It's my quarterback.
Guys, to answer your question as to why Jaden Daniels won it over Michael Penix, the last quarterback that did not have a rushing ability to win the Heisman was Sam Bradford. So you got to go all the way back to 2008. I think
he could run it a little bit too, but yeah, he wasn't a quote unquote running, dual threat type guy for sure. Whatever. I like passers at quarterback.
But anyways, guys, let's turn our attention to the NFL. And right now, the playoff race is heating up. And for our first conversation today, the leader in the clubhouse, who is a quarterback on a team that is currently leading their division that you just don't trust?
To me, it comes down to two guys. It's either Jared Goff or it's Baker Mayfield. And I'm going Baker Mayfield, even though he led the game-winning drive yesterday and Tampa's got the number one seed in the NFC South. I just don't buy that he's got the juice to do that consistently, and he stepped up and did it well. Did it against the Falcons, defense that hadn't allowed a touchdown going into that game in like 24 quarters. It's Baker for me, Chad.
That is the correct answer. Let me give you an X factor answer on this one. Trevor Lawrence had some bad turnovers yesterday. I know he didn't look terrible physically moving around with the bad ankle injury he suffered the week before. But I've got my questions about Jacksonville as the AFC South division leader. I've got some questions about Trevor Lawrence too. So while I agree with Hutton, it is Baker Mayfield. I'll give honorary mention to Trevor Lawrence.
Fair.
Yeah, the Bucs 6-7, three-way tie among the Falcons and the Saints, but they own the tiebreaker as of right now. And for Trevor Lawrence next week, going to be playing against the Ravens on Sunday Night Football. So
nearly half the league is under 500 right now.
Woof. All right, guys, moving around. Talked earlier about the backup quarterbacks and why the biggest problem for the NFL is just their star quarterbacks aren't exactly playing well. But who is a backup quarterback you think that can take his team the farthest? And your options are Joe Flacco with the Browns, Jake Browning with the Bengals, Gardner Minshew with the Colts, and whoever the Vikings decide to roll with.
To me, it's Jake Browning, and I'll make it simple. He's put up some good numbers and done well since he came. He's got the best supporting staff. I think he's got the best offensive infrastructure around him with Zach Taylor, with Jamar Chase. Go down the list. Joe Mixon running the ball well now also. I'm going to go with Browning because I think he's got the best supporting cast of all these guys.
I nearly went with Browning as well. I'm going Joe Flacco, however, because he's got the best defense. And a month in the NFL is an eternity. Just ask Joshua Dobbs. So while we've seen great performances so far from Browning, I'm not trying to take it away from him. I at least see, even as a veteran off the street, Davey, Chad, Flacco's got the defense that's going to keep them in ball games.
The Cleveland Browns saga, that's been fun to watch. And, I was talking with Tyler earlier. He was like, I think Kevin Stefanski even likes not having Deshaun Watson to deal with. And Joe Flacco's stepped into form.
I mean, what does that say about the decision to do what they did with Deshaun Watson? If that's true.
I would hit the brakes on that.
Kevin Stefanski.
I would hit the brakes on that a little bit, though.
Yeah, that was a great first drive from Joe Flacco. I watched a lot of that game. There were a few drives after that where Joe Flacco was seeing some ghosts pretty quickly and just firing that ball out of bounds and trying not to get hit at all. And that's the Joe Flacco I seem to remember the last time he played also.
How many quarterbacks are going to be standing by the time we get to January in the playoffs from the division leaders? Because the guys keep dropping. And Flacco, by the way, is throwing a lot of passes in the last 2 games. Don't get hit. Coming up, more headlines straight ahead.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, a bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, hour number 2 is here. How am I with Hutton Withrow across the OutKick Network, the Monday edition, reacting to the football weekend across the NFL. We've got plenty of talks, discussion, takes coming up on some of the results that we saw in Week 14. You can join us in that discussion right now. Chad is in the chat on YouTube. Search out OutKick, hit subscribe, and you'll be able to jump in to the OutKick mix.
Man, I thought I'd seen everything in our chat, but the truth in the chat describes Joe Flacco at this point in his career as a bit more of an athletic Ben Roethlisberger. I have never heard of Joe Flacco being more athletic than Ben Roethlisberger at any point in both those men's lives, including right now. I would never describe Joe Flacco as a more athletic Ben Roethlisberger, and I'm saying this as Ben Roethlisberger, who's probably been on his couch since he stopped playing, is still better at avoiding a sack than Joe Flacco. I can totally disagree with that take.
I would compare him more to like a Kerry Collins athleticism.
I compare him to a guy who's way better at it, but someone who plays quarterback in the NFL the way Hutton and I would mentally. And that is get rid of the ball within 1.5, 2 seconds in order to not get hit. That's how he plays the game.
I think they're going to be on another quarterback soon.
Because of injury?
He passes the football way too much for Cleveland.
Tyler didn't want to hear that.
Just based on the attempts and the number of injuries we're seeing at the position. We've got the full list coming up and some updates, too. The good news just quickly on Justin Jefferson, he has not sustained any major issue based on that hit that he took across the middle. But the Browns have had 4 different quarterbacks win at least one game.
It's a good story.
First time in their franchise history.
And their defense is awesome.
First time since the Texans did this, I believe 2014 or 2015.
Their plan, the scripted series to start the game that ended with David Njoku wide open. That was a thing of beauty. That's a way to kickstart the offense and get Joe Flacco going. A nice win for them. And again, playing that many guys and winning the way they have has been impressive.
Impressive, Shohei Ohtani, who's now a Los Angeles Dodger. And, well, he gets the bag and then some, even though he's a one-way player, at least for the first year, based on the Tommy John or close to the Tommy John surgery that he had to go through, and he won't be on the mound for Los Angeles. Chad, ultimately, he ends up with the franchise that he's always really respected, and he ends up with the franchise that the Angels didn't want to trade him to. That was the one organization that's the discussion centered around where, I mean, if they're willing to give him this, they probably picked up the phone and they were offering enough and then some. To me, the deal, $700 million. As we dive into this, I would love to know what they offered in a trade to get him last season. If they're willing to give him this much, because there's no doubt they would have overpaid and what the Angels turned down. I would love to know the details of.
If you're the California Angels, as I'll always affectionately refer to them as, and you're in Anaheim, California, and you just had Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout for as long as you did.
Yes.
And you did not advance to the playoffs in that time with those two superstar studs.
At all, though, yes.
Becoming a buyer this year at the trade deadline, doing all those things. You refuse to trade to your crosstown I put rival in air quotes. Your rival, the Dodgers. They're not a rival. They're way better in all ways. You refuse to trade, and then he ends up going there anyway. Are you not having an existential crisis right now if you work for that organization thinking, should we be in Major League Baseball? Is this the right avenue? Or have we chosen the right profession right now? Should the California Angels be a pro baseball team playing at the Major League level? Or is this town too small for 2 teams? That's what I'm thinking from the Angels' perspective at this point. And we know the Dodgers dominate that market from a baseball perspective. So that sucks for the Angels. I would honestly have I think of myself as somewhat self-aware. If I have any self-awareness at all in the Angels organization, I'm really hurting right now, knowing that Ohtani just ended up with the Dodgers in the end, and that we couldn't even get to the playoffs. The playoffs, as Jim Mora would say, with Ohtani and Trout. I'm hurting a lot if I'm the Angels. From the Dodgers' perspective and from Ohtani, great job by them feels like a situation where they were not going to stop until they got him and just even bid over what some were speculating he could get to make sure they got him. And they got their guy. Good for them. Hutton, as a fan of baseball that wants to see the game grow and get better, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that he's going to stay on the West Coast. The Dodgers, hey, that's an upgrade from a franchise standpoint. There's going to be more eyeballs on him with that team. And this is not just me being hurt as a Braves fan that he didn't choose to go to Atlanta. When this all started, I was thinking maybe the Chicago Cubs, maybe someone on the – I just think for baseball purposes, Ohtani not in the Pacific time zone would have been great for the game. For whatever reason, I had my eyes on the Cubs throughout, thinking that would be a really cool spot for him to end up. Another banner organization that a lot of people care about playing at Wrigley Field. That would have been neat. Again, this is just me playing PR, media, fantasy land of where I'd like to see a unicorn of a player and a generational guy end up. Instead, he ends up across town in Southern California playing for the Dodgers. Great for the Dodgers. Good for baseball overall that he goes to a more high-profile franchise and organization. Terrible for the Angels. But in the end, Hutton, not what could have been best for the game of baseball, in my humble opinion.
The news comes out, really, and it's just kind of an afterthought. It's 10 years, $700 million, no opt-outs. And I say an afterthought because they weren't allowed, the media didn't really hype it because there was no information. They weren't given anything because it was going to be held against the club if news got out. But, Chad, I'm thinking to myself, like, this was kind of always the landing spot, even whenever news was being reported about the Dodgers really coveting him and him really respecting the organization, and that's where he wanted to go. And the other thing, too, I want to know, do we have an estimate of how many teams actually try to get involved? Because when you think of the money and the global marketing that's involved here, it's estimated that the Angels they netted between 10 and 20 million per season off of the Ohtani brand. It's estimated that the Dodgers will double that, if not go above that, 40 to 50 million just in net off of the Ohtani brand as they push it globally. That's 400 to 500 million if you just want to keep it on one specific number over 10 years for a $700 million player. Does he end up playing that long? We'll see. But the brand itself helps you pay for it. And if you know that, where were the other offers in this range? Because this was, by and large, this was kind of knew exactly the details of the timeline. They wanted to get it done quickly in 2 to 4 weeks. Check. They did that. They wanted it done before the winter meetings. They get it done the weekend after. But everything kind of followed the same timeline, and I would love to know how many teams thought, we can't afford it. But when you really get down to the bare bones of it, the marketing lane that you obtain with this helps you pay for half of the contract. Just the numbers alone.
Maybe.
And where he takes off from there.
Well, maybe they don't need him to be a personality, but you would think that, that would be part of it.
Baseball does.
He's a very likable guy.
Right.
But it's incredible to me that someone who really just wants to keep to himself, and Mike Trout's got a lot of this also, did not want any hubbub surrounding his courtship with other teams and all that he possesses such marketing capability. He does because of the international market.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Again,
massive audience for the one team.
Dodgers better for MLB than him with the Angels. But I was really hoping he'd get out of the Pacific time zone and be Central time with the Cubs. I mean, I'm not a Yankees guy, but Ohtani with the Yankees in that market with that franchise would have been an enormous boom. Boston is another great one. Enormous boom for that rivalry.
And really the Cubs.
Red Sox, Yankees for all of Major League Baseball.
What do you think the offer goes up if he pitches next year? He doesn't get hurt?
I don't know. I think probably if he's not going through the
Schilling
surgery.
would tell us it was around $600 million is what he thought he would get. It would go down. And a lot of people were saying it would go down because of the surgery.
Yeah, people are reacting to the money and thinking, goodness, is anyone really worth this that plays sports? But you got to look at it, though, as a guy. He's two players. He is, when he gets right and healthy, he is a stud ace pitcher for your rotation, and he's one of the best sluggers in the game. So you're paying that money, and the way you justify it is we've essentially just signed 2 10-year, $350 million contracts.
Right.
For the best slugger in the game and one of the best pitchers in the game. That's what you're telling yourself, and that's why you're
and he doesn't
allocating
take days
that
off.
much money to him.
If you have a doubleheader and he throws in the first game, he's going to DH
hit
for you.
Yeah.
He refuses to sit. So if you're paying a ticket to go watch Ohtani play, he's going to be in the game.
Yep.
At some point, you're going to see him at the plate minimum, and it's a ton of money. I also wonder, did ball clubs not go in, Chad, because of the pending, the uncertainty of the television deals? That's another thing too. With that revenue coming in, how do you produce the liquid asset in order to pay this money? That could also affect them, and I think that will affect a lot of the structure, the landscape of Major League Baseball moving forward.
I think honestly, the teams that went in on this are teams that are okay with losing money. Quite frankly, because that is the reality of it. If you're going to spend 10 years, $700 million on one player, and you mentioned the uncertainty around the future television contracts, not really knowing where all this is going to land now that regional sports networks are about to be no more, then you are prepared to have a loss. But that loss, ultimately, you believe, will be a gain because you're going to win more baseball games, you're going to play in the playoffs, you're going to get more marketing exposure. But you got to be prepared, and you got to have the money to be able to withstand some loss in that. And that's not every Major League Baseball team, as we know. Now, you can still win at a high level, not being one of those billionaire owners that's okay with losing a ton of money. And we've seen that time and time again with the game. That, to me, is where it has improved, is we've seen teams that don't have the wealthiest ownership, that have been really smart with how they build their clubs, that have had a lot of success in baseball. And I think that's helped the sport overall.
It has. It's also, just to point out briefly, the 4 most valued franchises right now in Major League Baseball were all in on this at some point.
Yep.
Dodgers, Red Sox, Cubs, Giants. And then Atlanta's right there, somewhere around there. But the Giants were also mentioned, at least at the trade deadline.
The Giants are now in for the next Japanese pitching stud prospect that's 25 years old. Yamamoto, I believe, is the last name. Probably butchered that.
They're not looking for East Coast viewers.
There may be some more letters in that also that I missed out on.
They're not looking for the East Coast viewers in this country. They're looking for...
No, but that appears to be a bidding war between the 2 New York teams for him. With Cohen versus the Yankees, because the Yankees had a scout at every single one of his games this summer that just moved to Japan to watch him and be around him and scout him all year. Every single game.
Chad, right now, Dak Prescott would be your MVP in the NFL. Odds-on favorite in Vegas based on what they've done. And what they've done is win. Dallas and San Francisco. And they win at home. If you are a Cowboys fan, you want home field advantage. You're gunning for that number 1 spot in the NFC. They can obtain that. They were able to beat Philadelphia easily last night on Sunday Night Football. And they did it off of 10 days rest. San Francisco did it the week prior. They also had 10 days rest going in against the Eagles. And now it's between Dallas and San Francisco for the best team currently in the National Football League. It's San Francisco, but not by much. And Prescott is the reason why.
Hutton, tell me if you agree or disagree. I think you have to go 3 deep of NFC teams before you get to the first AFC team from a roster standpoint. If I'm just rating the rosters across the NFL, I am going in no uncertain order, but these are the top 3. Philly, San Fran, Dallas. And then I think there's a slight drop-off, and then I'm arguing Miami or Baltimore.
I think
roster,
it's Miami,
top to bottom.
Just pure talent, not where I think they'll be.
And Miami's the one that I think you could argue is in that mix of 3.
Jalen Ramsey
in the NFC
is back now.
Yes. But I think those are the 3 best teams. If I'm just looking 53-man roster, putting them up against each other, I go in order: San Fran, Philly, Dallas, but that is starting to change my opinion a little bit with these Cowboys.
Yeah, and Philly's gone through a blip here where I won't say it was predictable because they're better than what they've shown recently. But they went through a stretch where their schedule opened up for them to start like they did in their start last year. And they got off to, the 9-1, 10-1 start, whatever it was. Now they've dropped some games. They've lost to San Francisco and Dallas. And they're staring down a possibility of not having the number 1 seed and maybe not even winning their division. Dallas owns control of that. I'm looking, though, at what they've done recently, and it hasn't been pretty. Dallas, though, has won, 15, 16 straight games at home now? And the team that they've lost to in consecutive seasons after 12-win seasons is San Francisco in the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. So while Dak can be your MVP, and I think right now he's got it, it's him and Brock Purdy, and I think so many people don't view Brock Purdy through that lens. Jalen Hurts is also there, but he's not playing at that level head-to-head against the quarterback across the field from him. But that alone tells you the 3 talented teams that you're talking about. It's those 3 NFC teams for the race for the most valuable player award.
We're going to see one of the teams we just talked about, the Dolphins, tonight on Monday Night Football. The only one of the 4 teams playing tonight that anyone would argue has the best roster in the NFL will be the Dolphins. I still cannot comprehend why you go same time for Monday Night Football and not stagger it with more of a 7 Eastern and then a West Coast later game. After that, I don't like the simultaneous Monday Night Football games.
They tried this last year, and they pulled a bigger number than they did when they tried the West Coast matchup.
I hate it.
Talk Texas Longhorns next.
Victoria's Secret used to be sexy. On that note, let's talk about Victoria's Secret because we continually talk about saving women's spaces, their sports leagues, their locker rooms, but we've never actually talked about their dressing rooms in retail stores. Well, now we also are getting the opportunity to talk about that one because the other day, according to an article by Newsweek, a trans woman started complaining on social media that Victoria's Secret mistreated them because they wanted to use a dressing room in one of their stores. So the trans person tweeted out this, quote, "I was trying to find a cute bra at Victoria's Secret, and they made me wait until every cis woman left the dressing rooms before I could go into one of them. They even made other cis women wait until I had my turn, so no cis woman would have to be in any of the 5 other rooms." Obviously, she's meaning at the same time. So let's just examine this for what it's worth. A biological man, right, was trying on a cute bra. Why? I don't know, because if you were to see the picture of this trans person, there's nothing for the bra to cover, that I can tell at least. I'm not sure why you'd want to wear a bra because as a woman, I can tell you that bras are not comfortable and no woman looks forward to wearing a bra. So it's very puzzling why someone would go to all of the trouble to try to find a cute bra. But that's just me talking. Anyways, they were forced to wait by sales associates in order to, of course, protect the privacy of all the other actual women who are using the same space. And to which I say, cry me a river, right? There are so many bigger problems in this world. This does not seem like one of them that should necessarily be addressed or made all that important. Also, hats off to these sales associates, by the way, because it was only a matter of time before Victoria's Secret had to respond to this trans person on X saying this: "We're sorry to hear about your experience in our store, and we'd love to speak with you directly." And then when they were asked about the incident, Victoria's Secret told Newsweek via email, quote, "We are committed to ensuring a great experience for our customers, so we always welcome feedback. Our associates are focused on providing exceptional customer service, especially during this busy shopping season." So here's how I interpreted all of this. When I read this generic response, first and foremost, to the trans person on X, and then Victoria's Secret's very cut and dry corporate explanation to Newsweek, I actually felt kind of convinced that Victoria's Secret may have finally learned their lesson. Because after abandoning their foundational values and going woke several years ago, that is, of course, we've already talked about this on the show several times, when they used to use the hottest women in the world to model and advertise their lingerie, and then they turned to using body-inclusive, plus-size models, also biological men, Victoria's Secret went broke. Just looking at this year alone, in quarter 3, they're down $71 million. So clearly, they're absolutely tanking. So the company has already said it's going to reverse course, get back to sexy, but now these responses tell me that they might actually mean it. I mean, the reply on X to the trans person was very generic. Like any person would probably get complaining for any reason to any company online. Like, for example, if I'm going to complain to Delta Airlines for not giving me a great experience, sounds very similar to what they would tell me.
Coming up, we've got NFL Rapid Fire. We name a team and we tell you the perception of said team.
Word association.
Yeah.
Davey's going to throw a name out there, and we're just going to start talking in what, 3 sentences or less about the team?
Yep, got that. Plus, we've got 2 games tonight on Monday Night Football.
Hutton, it's difficult for 2 guys that have done 3+ hours of content daily for a lot of time like we have to try to keep things in 2 to 3 sentences.
We've done 4 hours before.
We're going to have to, that's what I'm saying, 3+ hours, 3 or 3+. So usually, keeping it under 2 sentences isn't our strong suit. We'll find out if we can do it a little bit later.
Yeah, we will. We don't have to do that right now, though.
No, another guy who can talk, and he does it very, very well, is on with us right now.
From Orange Bloods is Anwar Richardson, joins us again here on Hot Mic with Hutton with her. Anwar, thank you for the time and hope things are well.
Everything's going fantastic. I can't wait for this football segment that you guys have going. Now, are you guys going like old school to like teams that are no longer in existence, or just current teams?
Just current teams and where they are, based on results that we've seen recently. It's a cluster right now, especially on offense in the National Football League. It's not there in Austin. When the college football rankings were announced, did you expect Texas to be at 4? And Florida State at 3, just perception?
I thought Texas was going to get in.
Okay.
I did think Texas was going to get in. I thought at the end of the day, 2 things were going to factor in for them. One was going to be the last 2 victories that they had. They've closed out the season very strong, so I felt comfortable with that. And secondly, I just felt like the committee was never really sold when I would hear them being interviewed week after week. Didn't seem like they were 100% sold on FSU. And I felt like, especially when I knew that the 3rd-string quarterback was going to play, even though they won, I felt like that actually Texas was going to be number 3. It's actually the thing I tweeted out the night before. And I felt like Bama was going to get in at number 4. Ironically, this is one of the few times I think I got everything right. I did think at the end of the day, that no matter what happened with FSU, that they just probably, for right, wrong, or indifferent, I felt like the committee kept talking about they wanted the best games possible. And I didn't think they felt like FSU was going to be the best game. And so that Alabama win for me secured it for them to get in. And so, it wasn't a huge surprise for me at all.
I feel like most of America feels this way also, Anwar. It feels to me like this thing is headed for a rematch between Texas and Alabama in the national championship game. Does Longhorn Nation get that sense as well when you look at the way this thing broke out?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of confidence, within Longhorn Nation that this is going to be a rematch when it's all said and done. They played Washington last year. They lost that game, but this is a really good defense that Texas has. They've got, a guy who's just named the best defensive lineman in the country with Tavondre Sweat. They've got Byron Murphy. So the thing that Steve Sarkisian and his staff understood when they got here and they got this job was that they had to build the interior. Like, it wasn't as good as it is right now. So they understood SEC brand football. And then when they got here, they didn't know they were going to be in the SEC. But the thing that Sarkisian said is like, hey, eventually, if we get out of the Big 12, we got to face an SEC team, right? So let's go ahead and build it up. So they built up the offensive line. They were able to build up the defensive line as well. And then we saw that this was a team that, when Steve Sarkisian said, hey, they had the best win in college football in the 2023 season, it's hard to argue against going into Tuscaloosa and beating that team by double digits. And so the way that Texas has been playing, having the ability to get the quarterback Quinn Ewers healthy, get Xavier Worthy, one of the top receivers in the country, get him healthy as well. Jatavian Sanders, who's reviewed as the second best tight end in the country, he had been playing with a high ankle sprain, get him healthy as well. There's a lot of good feelings about Texas. And don't forget, this game is going to be in New Orleans. It's going to be in Texas' backyard. Yeah. This is a Southern game. You're really you're going in there. And the next two games, not only we're talking New Orleans, we're talking Houston. So when you start talking about home field advantages, even though Washington may be the higher seed, they will be outnumbered when they get there and for the Sugar Bowl.
So the story underneath the surface storyline here, Anwar Richardson, our guest from Orange Bloods. So Jim Harbaugh, before Michigan has been on this run of college football playoff appearances, he's on the hot seat. He's got to prove it. Mm-hmm. Sarkisian, on a hot seat meter, where was it coming into this season? And where is it now? And if he wins the title, what does that mean for him and his legacy at Texas, given where it was 4.5 months ago?
Well, you're 100% right in what you said. Don't forget, just a couple of years ago, Jim Harbaugh, they made him take a pay reduction. Right. Okay. So that, like, you talk about hot seat, they're like, hey, we're just going to cut your salary. Like, that's usually when that happens. You guys and I, we work in the corporate world. That's usually like, hey, we would like for you to quit. Right. That's usually, but that didn't happen. So we talk about pay reduction to now, all of a sudden, they love him because of the wins that are coming. Sarkisian wasn't like that at all. I think they were very patient. The powers that be that hired him wanted to kind of be able to see this thing through. They believed in him. They believed in the process. He was a likable person, a little bit more likable than Tom Herman was, and that helps out a lot. But Tom Herman wasn't as liked by the administration. Steve Sarkisian's very well liked. Listen, I've known people who were with him in the NFL years ago, first stint, will tell you, I haven't heard anyone say a bad thing about the guy. So he's very likable. He's very relatable. I don't think he'd had much of a hot seat going in. I felt like the SEC next year would have been the quote unquote hot seat for him. But right now, I mean, he's playing with house money at this moment. I think the hope was, hey, get this team to the Big 12 title, compete, hopefully win it. Now that he's able to win it, anything he does after this is a bonus. If he does win it, if you look at his salary, he's one of the lower paid coaches of all coaches at this point. And he had to come in on the low based on the history, right? The history was there. And they said, okay, we're going to give you a shot at this job, but we're not going to pay you the way we pay a Lincoln Riley. We're not going to pay you the way that we pay a Chip Kelly. You're going to prove it. Well, you go out there and you win it all. Now, all of a sudden, you and your agent, you go back to the table and say, okay, we proved it. Show us our money. And that's when you have to probably go ahead and load the Brinks truck or Venmo or whatever they do nowadays, Cash App, whatever it is. And you're going to have to pay this man. And as one of the more elite guys, and Texas obviously has the ability to do that.
Is Texas back is one of those things that floats around college football at all times. I know it's ESPN with the promos of this playoff even saying, the one team is back and talking about Texas is back. Curious from a Texas perspective, because the rest of America has a lot of fun with it, and I will definitively say now in the playoff, Texas is definitely back. Do Longhorn fans have fun with that as well, or are they happy to see that question go away for a little while when people talk about Texas being back or not?
Well, I would say it's a kind of a two-part thing, right? They're back to a certain degree when we start talking about relevancy. See, you and I, all of us, right, we're a little bit older. So we grew up with Texas being here, right? And that's what we know. But it's been 14 years since that 2009 season with Colt McCoy versus Alabama. So we're talking about a generation of recruits who haven't really seen Texas be the Texas that all of us grew up and seeing. You know, when we start talking about what happened in 2005 season, we're talking about 18 years ago. Modern day recruits weren't born. You know what I'm saying? Like they weren't here. Like, so what they've seen is they've seen Georgia be successful. They've seen Alabama be successful. They've seen LSU taste some success. They've seen Ohio State be successful. They've heard about Texas, but it's the same way that they've probably heard about Nebraska, what they used to be with Tommy Frazier at one point, right? It's just something that the old folks talk about. So for Texas, it's probably back to being relevant from on the field. Not Texas makes all the money that's out there. Not that Texas can do stadium renovations. Not that Texas is rich or any of these other things or being a fine educational institution. But it's more about Texas being back on the football field and showing a new generation that literally my kids, your kids have never seen Texas. The Vince Young thing, I mean, you might as well tell them, you know, a fable about something else that because they don't necessarily, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't resonate to them. It resonates to us. It doesn't resonate to them. So Texas being back, I think it's, like I said, it's a twofold thing. They're probably back to being relevant. Time will tell because they still got to go into SEC next year and do it week in and week out. And so, you know, being able to get up for Alabama for 1 week, that's great. But being able to do Alabama or Georgia, then, you know, Ole Miss, and then LSU, and then Texas A&M, and, you know, that go through that gauntlet. They do it again next year. I think you can safely say they're back.
What matchup do you feel like worries them the most against Washington?
Oh, Penix versus their pass defense. I mean, the Texas pass defense has not been good at all this season. I don't have the rankings in front of me, but it's somewhere between the 90s or 100s or so as far as that pass defense. Them being able to max protect, if Washington is going to max protect and give Penix time to throw against that secondary, that definitely is a huge worry, you know, for them. They lost one guy by the name of Jalen Catalon, a safety. He decided to go into the transfer portal. Derek Williams, who was another freshman safety who's played a lot for them, he's going to serve a first half suspension because he got ejected for targeting in the Big 12 championship game. And so that is the big worry is, hey, if Penix has time against the secondary, then he could do a lot of damage.
Big 12 fan base. If Texas advances past Washington, because I think the answer would be Washington. Rest of the Big 12, are they pulling for Bama and or Michigan, or are they pulling for Texas?
Oh, they're not pulling for Texas.
So they'll pull for Bama.
They will
Michigan.
pull for Bama. They will pull for Bama. The Big 12 has made it very clear, and it's the unfortunate misstep that I think Brett Yormark made before the season, because Brett Yormark, who's done everything so great since he took over, he's the first person, really the commissioner that got ahead of the TV deals to make sure that the Big 12 survived. Like, you remember there was a time where people were talking about the Big 12 having to fold into the pack. And then all of a sudden, he was able to get the TV deal done first. And then all of a sudden, they're the ones that ended up being on top. So he's done so many great things for that conference. But when you go into Lubbock before the season and you let it be known that, hey, I want you to beat one of my member schools, you basically let everybody know, hey, you want Texas to lose. And that's why when Texas was won and they claimed the Big 12 championship, that's why the fans were booing him relentlessly when they were on the podium. And that's why the fans were chanting SEC, SEC, SEC. It wasn't because they were, quote unquote, proud to be in the SEC, but they just knew that he didn't like them. So the Big 12 has made it be clear that they're not necessarily trying to attach themselves to Texas's success, because you let it be known that you were wanting them to lose. Again, a bad mistake, because now this could have been a thing where Brett Yormark and the Big 12 say, hey, TCU last year, Texas this year, look how powerful of a conference it is. And instead of embracing them, you made them kind of into the villains that were leaving the conference, that were, you know, the ones that are abandoning them. And so it's kind of hard to claim it. You know, it's like you can't, if you get divorced, you can't necessarily claim your ex-wife's success at that point, right? You're just kind of like, you just got to let that be. And that's kind of where we're at with that.
It's just a fascinating dilemma for them, because you're saying the Big 12 is chanting SEC matched up against Texas, who's bolting for the SEC. If it's Bama, it's just, That's a tough spot. And they would also be cheering for Michigan, where I don't know how the rest of the country's on board with what Michigan's
It's not
doing.
anti-SEC as much as it is anti-Texas.
Right.
Not only their beef is with the SEC, their beef is with Texas.
That's right.
Yes. The feeling that Texas, abandoned them. They think they're better than everybody, blah, blah, blah. And so, yes, it's you think you're better, you're going to the SEC, we don't like you. And so Texas has taken this, us versus them mentality, throughout the entire season.
Anwar Richardson has been our guest. Orange Bloods, the go-to source for Longhorns coverage. Thank you for the time yet again, man. We'll be reaching out as the kickoff nears in what feels like 3 months from now, and we'll continue to break down the matchups.
You guys take care anytime.
Yeah,
thanks,
man.
Anwar.
Thank you. That's a tough spot, especially for Yormark, who's. By the way, Yormark's awesome. I love his blunt response, and I would be rooting against them too if I'm the rest of the conference.
I also like the fact that he said he doesn't like what's happened to the Pac-12.
Yeah.
And he basically came back and said, I always felt consolidation was going to make us the strongest. He was the one that wanted to consolidate and bring things together with the Pac-12 to form their own super conference. And when George Kliavkoff said no, he said, all right, well, we're going to go do our own thing. We're going to be better at it. And then they started taking teams from the Pac-12, and here we are with no Pac-12 remaining.
Yeah.
So I like those comments from him also.
But, man, it's a tough pill to swallow whenever the perfect storm has happened. Texas is in the playoff, and, well,
just do what everyone else should be doing and root for Washington. Well, not Texas fans, but, if
do whatever you
Washington
need
wins,
to do.
Root for Washington.
There's a lot of NFL fan bases rooting for backup quarterbacks. We've got injury notes and much more straight ahead right here on Hot Mic.
Hey, here's a feel-good story. You ready? And this needs to be talked about more. Lost in all of the, hey, man, inspire change, Whitey's bad of the NFL, there are folks in the NFL that are, great dudes. The Carolina Panthers have a player named Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst is doing something that everybody in sports should do. Yeah, I know everybody in sports should try to be a rapper. Yeah, I know, like Von Miller, everyone in sports should get their side piece to not frickin' talk about your indiscretions. Yeah, I know everybody in the NFL as a wide receiver has to act like a damn idiot. I get all that. I do, I swear. But Hayden Hurst, he ain't like that. Hayden Hurst is trying to shed light on veterans with suicide and suicide prevention. That's a good thing. No, it's a really good thing. Suicide's a major issue, and it's only going to get worse. I'm going to tell you right now, this is a separate issue, but lack of parenting. Do whatever you want leads to suicide. People want direction. People want purpose. People want guardrails. People don't want to be left free. They get depressed. They get depressed if you don't have anybody giving you direction. And that's the society of parents that we're living in. Suicide rates among teenagers are at an all-time high, and I hate to say this, but they're only going to go higher. I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but that's what's going to happen. When you have a lack of parenting, when you let kids run free, drugs, alcohol, whatever they want in our current society are actually sometimes made available by idiot parents. I had a friend who let his kid drink in my house, and I'm like, you're an idiot. I love him. It's one of my best friends, but you're an idiot. It ain't cool. It ain't smart. It ain't fun. It's stupid. I can't even imagine my kids asking me to do that in our house. But anyway, that's parenting. That's where parenting is headed. But when you go overseas and you are in a war, and that war involves killing, you killing somebody, you seeing devastation, you seeing what a bomb can do to a town, the horrific things that our veterans have seen and had to do. Of course, that comes home with you. What do you think you do? You flip a switch, you come home, and you never think about it. Hell, I think about things that I did 10 years ago that weren't even bad. 20 years ago. Like, why did I do that? That's stupid. I mean, the only perfect people, as we know, are writers, media guys. They're the only ones. They're the only ones that are absolutely perfect. Even when they have affairs, even when they do stupid stuff, they write it off as, well, I was figuring life out. We, as the rest of us, don't have that same grace. And veterans come home and they're like, oh, man. Can you imagine? Let me just give you a scenario. Let's just say you are in charge of taking a hill and you and your guys gunned down 50 people. You think that just leaves you? You think that just goes away when you come back to a nation that hates you, that doesn't respect you, that doesn't help you, that treats illegal immigrants better than you? Hell no.
Chad, right now, 16 teams across the NFL are below 500. That's the status of the National Football League right now.
That's exactly what the league wants, right? Half the league at 500 or better, the other half below 500. Right down the middle, evenly split. Problem with the league right now is that the offense versus defense is not evenly split. This is a defensive-dominated league, and that's never what they really want.
We'll get to the injury report right now, but keep in mind, even Patrick Mahomes has not thrown for 300 yards in 6 straight games. That's the longest drought of his career, for instance. It's not on him, all on him.
I mean, he was losing his mind when that game went final also.
Yeah.
We had never seen that from him. Completely lost it.
We'll find out what they're looking at. They're looking into Mahomes' post-game comments. Of course, Andy Reid's popping off. He's going to be fine. I want to see what happens to Mahomes. It's good for them. Pop off if you want to.
Yeah, if you want to pay the fine, do it.
Right, but I want to see what the fine's going to be for the player, not the coach. Coaches don't say anything about officiating, normally, unless you're just willing to take the $10,000 fine or whatever it ends up being.
I did like it when Mahomes said, I still hope they play that play during the reel for Travis Kelce's Hall of Fame induction, that they don't take that off, that they play it to show his greatness.
Justin Jefferson is a great receiver. He's not great this year. He's missed time due to injury, and then, they call some passes hospital balls. There was one yesterday, legitimately one. Dobbs thrown across the middle of Jefferson that sent him to the hospital. A shot over the middle. The good news is he's not expected to miss time. He could play this upcoming week for the Vikings within that offense. So went to the medical tent, then to the emergency room to evaluate his chest injury. Does not appear to be anything serious or long-term.
That is really good news for the Vikings.
Great news. C.J. Stroud left the game with a concussion for Houston in their awful performance, an awful loss to the New York Jets.
By the way, I feel like the Vikings, going back to them, will eventually have to go back to Dobbs again.
Yes.
I could see a scenario where either Mullins gets knocked out of a game or he really struggles one game, and just to try to spark, they go back to Dobbs for something.
Justin Herbert, the season for the Chargers gets worse and worse. He has a finger injury in his throwing hand. Reportedly fractured his right ring finger against the Broncos on Sunday, then missed the latter half of the game. At Easton Stick in the game.
I think Justin Herbert should wait to play for his next head coach. That should be the plan now. Let's go ahead and sit out the rest of this month. Let's get ready for the next Chargers head coach. That will not be Brandon Staley.
Yeah, and you have Josh Jacobs, who left the game. He was heavily limping around. He's got a knee issue. He's suffering a knee issue, so there's that as well for the Raiders.
I'd had a lot of issues playing offense in that game. It is crazy to me that the NFL has not had a game finish 0-0 in regulation since 1940. That would have been the first ever game to go to an overtime scoreless, because in 1940 it ended in a tie. There was no overtime.
This could too, right? Can't you end in a 0-0 tie?
It could have ended after overtime, but I'm saying it would have been the first ever overtime game played 0-0 ever. But isn't that crazy? I feel like there would have been at least one awful weather game
That
where
just put
no
it there.
one would have
Yeah.
scored and it would have ended in regulation 0-0.
Yeah, the closest I think we've been is it was 3-3 last year, Jets-Patriots, in the game, the post game where Zach Wilson wouldn't say that it was on the offense that let the defense down. They ended up, because they allowed a punt return. It wasn't the defense allowed 3 points to the Patriots and lost because they could not go score more than 3 points against the Patriots. There was a punt return for a touchdown that made it 10-3 final.
I understand why it's very rare that would ever happen. I was shocked that no game has ever gone to overtime scoreless in the history of the NFL.
Man, that's by the way,
that record stays intact because of Nick Mullins getting the offense in field goal range to kick a field goal and win it.
First 3-0 game though since November 26, 2007. I was expected to be a lot later than that. And that was against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh beat Miami 3-0. November 26, 2007. It's the third game in the last 40 years that we've seen a 3-0 game.
Maybe that was the game that Big Ben actually had the athleticism of Joe Flacco.
Or knocked out of the game, maybe.
Yeah, that's what the poster on our chat was saying.
Plenty of teams with some issues. It's time for NFL Rapid Fire. Davey Hudson.
Guys, so going back to the well on this segment now, all the teams that are being mentioned are in playoff contention. I thought that would make things a little bit more interesting.
Sure.
But as we go through this, I know it can be hard, but I need a succinct, there we go, 2 to 3 sentence answer for these. And we're going to start off with where we started the show, and that's the 8-5 Kansas City Chiefs.
I'll start. It's a team coming to grips with the fact that they're not great. And I think that's very difficult for the players on that Kansas City team because it's been a great franchise. Multiple Super Bowls won, and I don't think they're going to take this laying down, Hutton. But to me, that sums it up for them is you're seeing the frustration boil over. You're seeing them now placing blame on refs and everyone else. The fact that their offense just hasn't been good enough.
No, I mentioned the 300-plus passing yards. I haven't seen that from Mahomes now in 6 straight. For me, it's Arrowhead is human. In a league where home field advantage does not matter, it does matter for a few stadiums. Arrowhead is no longer a true home field advantage for this Kansas City Chiefs franchise.
Okay, guys, and then speaking of Arrowhead, the Buffalo Bills were able to go in there and get the win. We currently have 6 teams in the AFC with a 7-6 record. So what are your thoughts on the Bills?
So I'll start. That was maybe the most important win for Sean McDermott in his tenure. That's not a playoff victory. A regular season. The dude's under fire for making a terrible analogy about 9/11 4 years ago. Weird how that pops up when the team's 6-6 and underachieving.
And not when they're 7-6.
Yeah. But now this was an important week because facing some heat for that, he said he apologized to the team immediately, had to apologize again this week. Fans aren't happy with the way this season has gone. I still don't think Bills fans want Sean McDermott out or anything. And I think most Bills fans got mad at the reporter for writing about it, more so they did their head coach for saying it. But that was an important win for them to go to Arrowhead and get above 500, especially considering everything going on around the team this week.
Yeah, and I would say just a quick sentence, they won a close game. If you go through their recent losses, they've lost to the Patriots 29-25. They lose to, of course, the Jets early in the season in a close game. They lose to the Broncos 24-22. They lose to the Bengals 24-18. That's another thing here is they won a close game on the road and against a team that has normally made the plays and they haven't turned it over.
All right, guys, moving right along, and we have a team that's sitting at 8-5. Didn't expect that, but the Cleveland Browns.
Joe Flacco is elite. As a backup quarterback coming off his couch to a team with a great defense. End of sentence.
Kings of the North. Kings of the AFC North in Cleveland. Because of their defense. Their defense shows up week in and week out in a league that we have complained about offensively for the last couple of months. The trend is defense. Cleveland's sets the trend. They're the fashion statement.
All right, guys, a team that has had some highs and some lows, coming off a low, but the 7-6 Houston Texans.
They're a year too soon. Losing to Zach Wilson, awful. losing Stroud to a concussion, that is detrimental to your playoff hopes. And they're in a stretch now where they've got to stack wins. This is one that will keep them out of the postseason.
That was the worst loss of a season for a team in playoff position or consideration coming in. That was just the worst Sunday overall. The way they lost, it wasn't close. To allow Zach Wilson to do that and to have their star rookie quarterback injured, that was I'm not overspeaking. That was the worst possible outcome for the Texans.
You can just forfeit at that point before you play if you knew that outcome.
Yeah, you look at this team going back even further. Their one loss or the one win for the Panthers came against the Texans. So, yeah, the Jets and the Panthers, two of those games are going to look back at the end of the year, and it's really going to be one of those what-if moments. But, guys, the Vikings, know you were just talking about them, but what was your takeaway from Minnesota?
At 7-6, they were underachievers early with how they started the season, and now they are unlucky late because they lose Kirk Cousins for the season with the Achilles. Justin Jefferson gets back from injury, finally suits up, and then takes the shot over the middle that sends him to the hospital. And they were trying to make a run, Chad, with the backup quarterbacks. They went back to Dobbs after a hot start in 2 games. Unlucky late based on the injuries, because if Cousins is there, they're a postseason team based on how their roster's constructed.
Can Nick Mullins be Joe Flacco for a team with a really good defense? I love what the Vikings have done defensively. That's what's kind of overshadowed by their problems on offense with trying to sort out the quarterback position, trying to sort through the injury to Justin Jefferson. Can Mullins be a guy that can be serviceable to keep them in the thick of it? I don't think so. To me, they're the third team in the NFC North. So this whole thing is crumbling for them at this point.
They're headed to Cincinnati this week.
Guys, don't look now, but the Denver Broncos have a winning record. What is your take on the team currently at 7-6?
Sean, go ahead.
I can't believe I'm saying this, and I'll be very quick on this one. The Denver Broncos are a contender to win the AFC West. That shocks me based on the way this thing started and even what we thought coming into the season.
One game back.
Sean Payton is coach of the year. That's all I need to say, Davey. Go ahead.
Wow. All right, guys. Well,
just took D'Amico Ryan's spot.
Let's go down to the NFC South. The Tampa Bay Bucks, 6-7, but they're leading the division.
Who cares?
Irrelevant.
Honestly, that's my one thought on Tampa Bay Bucks. Move right along. No one cares
They're
about
headed
that
to
division.
Dallas or Philly. First round.
I would be fine not seeing another second of a Tampa Bay Bucks game the rest of the year.
Or the division.
Next.
The entire division is under 500.
Yeah, you're kind of on it. Coming up, it's a team that's could potentially face them in the first round of the playoffs, but the Dallas Cowboys sitting at 10-3, currently atop the NFC East.
Home field advantage is how I describe Dallas. They don't lose in Texas. Philly needs to win the division because Dallas has not lost a home game in 15 straight kickoffs there. Plus, Dak Prescott has won his last 5 starts at home against Philadelphia.
2 sentences. Dak is elite right now. Micah Parsons is an absolute wrecking ball. And those 2 guys may win them a Super Bowl. That's what I see with the Dallas Cowboys. And how is it every time Jerry Jones, they show him celebrating in his luxury box? When he's talking, it looks like if you read his mouth, he's saying, how about them Cowboys, even when he's not. Just the way his mouth moves. Last night they scored a touchdown. He's it looks like he's telling everybody, how about them Cowboys? I don't know if he is or not, but every time I see him, I think that's what he's saying.
It's muscle memory at this point.
Yep.
And then, guys, on the losing end of that matchup last night, the now 10-3 Philadelphia Eagles.
Remember how we described the San Francisco 49ers in their 3-game skid. I'll leave it at that.
I think it's a team that maybe they needed this, not a reset, but to be rejuvenated a little bit. I'm ultimately like Hutton. I'm not worried about them, but there's a little bit of mini soul searching that can go on right now as they get ready for the end of the season and playoff push. Now's the time to have that bit of rejuvenation. And I think this is a group of guys that's going to find that. I don't see them wilting because they've played poorly a couple weeks.
We discussed it last week. I'm going to bring it back up. But should there have been more credence taken to David Carr's words about Jalen Hurts and his injuries?
No, because they went through a stretch where the NFL scheduling did them no favors. If you want to rest Jalen Hurts, their come to Jesus moment, whatever can be right here, this could be the stretch we would circle in May. Because they went through a stretch of playing the Cowboys, Chiefs, and Bills, 2 of the 3 on the road, and they won all 3. And then they, on a short rest, turned around by the San Francisco 49ers on 10 days rest.
Yeah, the Bills at home.
Lost.
The other 2.
Then they faced the Cowboys, who are also coming off of 10 days rest. And they finished the season against the Giants, the Cardinals, and the Giants. So if you want to rest your quarterback, rest him during the Giants, the Cardinals, and the Giants, or just win the division because Dallas is going to have a tougher stretch.
Can Marcus Mariota win those 3 games? That would be my question.
Not going to have to because Jalen Hurts can.
Play.
Jalen Hurts can play and win, and that team is, again, you don't hear the talking heads yelling at a screen saying, we told you Brock Purdy's not elite, and all of a sudden Philadelphia's got problems. The 49ers went through this too. They didn't bench their quarterback. The Eagles are going to be okay.
Fly, Eagles, fly, baby. Let's get fired up.
Final hour straight ahead.
Big hour coming up, everybody. Big hour.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, final hour is here on the Monday edition. Hot Mike with Hutton with Row across the OutKick Network. Glad you're with us. Chad, the show flying by today. They usually do.
Fast.
Usually do.
Yeah, it really has.
Especially to kick off the week. A lot to react to. Flying off the shelves right now, all the OutKick gear. You can head over to shop.outkick.com and take advantage of the OutKick store where we're celebrating the new playing field. Buy one, get one, 50% off for a limited time. You can find our favorite polos, T-shirts, and more when you visit shop.outkick.com and score 50% off. All you got to do, shop.outkick.com, add the items to your cart, and the discount is automatically applied. We make it easy. We make it easy.
And I am willing to personally fold your purchase for you.
Just make a note.
For extra
additional
money.
Notes.
Additional money, additional me. I'll write you
Chad
a note.
Wash it and dry it, and you'll have a smedium if you so please.
Hutton will notarize it when I'm done. We'll have an official stamp for the show that says this was hand-folded by Chad Withrow. We'll do all of it for you.
We'll be your notary.
Full service. Full service over here.
Right. Well, Chad wants to be out of ink when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's the hope.
Coming up, we've got plenty to react to and preview for a doubleheader. 2 games kicking off the same time for Monday Night Football. But first, sad news over the weekend where former NFL tight end and personal friend of myself, Chad, Clay, and so many others, and great representative for the city of Nashville, for the Tennessee Titans franchise and beyond across the league, Frank Wycheck, passed away at the age of 52. Far too young. Fell at his home at the time. He was living when he passed in Chattanooga, and meant so much to a Titans organization that moved from Houston and wanted a connection with the fan base and vice versa. And Frank was one of those. Steve McNair, Eddie George, Frank Wycheck. So that's the trio that you would mention. And post-NFL career, he joined as the game analyst for the Titans radio network and did a phenomenal job. While he was a player, he was hosting player shows downtown. The conduit, really, inside the locker room on a weekly basis. And was a great friend on my behalf in many situations. And Chad worked alongside with him as well. Overall, just a great guy and a great father. Leaves behind 2 lovely daughters who I believe one has children currently, the other recently graduating college, and 52 years old. Frank would want me to go into this. He would say multiple times, he did not think he would see the age of 50 because of CTE and the number of concussions that he suffered throughout his career. I had the ability and the great fortune to travel with an NFL franchise. Frank Wycheck sat in front of me on the charter flights. And the headaches, the migraines, just the overall mental aspect of what a former NFL player goes through, specifically one that knows and has friends that have taken their own lives based on just how they feel and what symptoms they're going through and the depression that causes. It's tough. And that's the wrong word to use. Frank would openly discuss it on his morning show that he hosted on the top-rated show in Nashville throughout his tenure as a radio host. And he would openly discuss it with current players. He would discuss it while calling Titans games, everything. Chad, I immediately, after just thinking about the family, I think about that. He donated his brain to the group that does the research on behalf of
Chris Nowinski.
All the former players, right? All the former players that were a part of that lawsuit against the league. Frank donated his brain to that research to help that cause, because he knew the feeling that the other players that either were able to find some help, what help there was based on this, or felt like it was too much. He knew that research is eventually going to help future former players. And there was a disconnect with Frank towards the end of his time around, at least me, I'm speaking for myself, because I think he started to go through those same things. And Chad, it saddens me because, we would go on the road, we would land, we'd go to the team hotel. We wouldn't see Frank until kickoff. He wanted to go in a dark room because that's how he felt. There were days where he woke up and he felt like there were spider webs, cobwebs in his head, and he could not function. That is terrifying and awful. And it's through what we watch now, where guys at the time still happens, try to play through those symptoms when in the moment it's happening on the football field. And he knew what was at stake. He knew and openly said, I'm going to live a short life. And I hate that for the former players that feel the same way, that still walk and talk about what they're feeling right now. Long story short, a great man passed away, and don't look past the great things, but also don't look past his message, which is, if guys say they're going through things, actually look at them and don't look at the number on a lawsuit that a league is paying to have it end and not brought up again, because he's donating more to that research currently.
Yeah, very well said, Hutton. And Frank wasn't well for a long time.
Yeah.
I think anyone who worked around him or knew him knew that.
Can I clarify one thing? He fell at his home.
Yeah.
And they found him. This was not anything that he had discussed, where he thought he was going to face some of the same symptoms. This was not that. So, it's still just awful, top to bottom.
It's heartbreaking, and like I said, was not well for a while, and anyone around Frank knew that. And I felt awful for the guy. He was also someone that was very caring. He would do things for people. He was always very pleasant and nice to be around. When I was a 22-year-old kid coming out of college, I was afraid to talk to a Frank Wycheck because of the legendary status he had in Nashville. And he was always super nice to me. And there's a lot of people, professionally, when you're someone young starting out, that isn't always nice to you or doesn't say hi to you. And he was never that guy. So I want to thank Frank for that part of it. And he was always that way and very generous to do so. Feel awful for his mother, for his brother, for his surviving children, grandchildren, also, all of his family. Terrible news, but like Hutton said, unfortunately, at least for me, not totally unexpected. And you see that number, 52, and that's tragic because that is still a pretty young guy. And I see that, and most people say, man, 52 years old. And Hutton, when I got the news, while it's shocking and it's a jolt initially, I can't say that I was totally shocked because of a lot of the issues that Frank had been facing for a while, and feel awful for his family. Quick Frank Wycheck story that I know that he'd probably laugh if I told this. Back in the day, we'd play a lunch bunch basketball game occasionally, and sometimes I would be cool enough to get the invite. And this is with former college and NFL players and NBA players locally in Nashville, and they'd play over at Vanderbilt. One time I met Frank there to walk into Vanderbilt's Memorial Gym where a game was going to happen at noon or whenever it was. It was a lunch bunch game after Frank's morning show that he had on radio in Nashville for years. Walk into the gym. We go up to the top of the rafters, and the Vanderbilt women's team was practicing, led by head coach at the time, Melanie Balcom. We're sitting there minding our own business, not even really talking, watching practice. Well, she sends a staffer, some GA up, who proceeds to kick us out of the gym for being there illegally at the time because we're waiting to take the floor after her team is done. And Frank, instead of fighting the GA or anything else, just turns to me and says, man, she must not be a Titans fan to kick Frank Wycheck out of this gym right now. And that was Frank. And I felt the same way. I'm thinking, you're going to, not me at the time,
right,
someone in my mid-20s, but you're going to kick Frank Wycheck, who threw the ball in the Music City Miracle, out of this gym in Nashville, Tennessee. I love Frank and Hutton. I think people now, we live in such a digital social media world.
Yeah.
I don't think unless you lived through it and understood what it was like living in a city who was granted an NFL team, there's not a lot of people who can talk about this because either you were born in a place that had a team for years or you had a team that wasn't in your city. But to have a Frank Wycheck that was brand ambassador for the Tennessee Titans in the whole state of Tennessee as a player was enormous. This was in an era that we didn't have social media to follow news or what was going on. This guy was doing TV shows, doing player radio shows. He was going to malls to meet people. He was speaking at youth football banquets. He was the ambassador for the Titans, one of them. And they had a bunch of great ones. Jeff Fisher, Eddie George, who you've seen on this show, Steve McNair.
Floyd Reese.
Also rest in peace. Floyd Reese.
Derek Mason. The list, there's a lengthy
not
list.
A lot of teams. You got to think mid-'90s, late 90s. There weren't a lot of organizations that could have pulled that off to that extent, and it was because of the people. The people at the top of the food chain that cared and wanted it to work made Nashville an NFL city when they moved here and had that open personality.
And did it in year one of the stadium opening. And those players were clutch. You know, you mentioned throwing the lateral right down the line for the Music City Miracle, which is a top 5, top 3 play all time in the National Football League, in the history of pro football, straight up. But beyond that, he had a perfect passer rating, I believe, whenever they would do the trick plays. And was the go-to guy for Steve McNair whenever things were on the line. And beyond that, too, the number of people that he connected with throughout his career that were still reaching out and were great friends with him, that would go on golf trips, or he would be in a certain city. We'd be on the road at a stadium, and they would pop in and ask how he was doing. Stepped away from the game. He had 2 concussions in 2004, 2 of many, and stepped away and retired, and started with the radio commentary in 2005. And ultimately, Chad, he stepped away from Titans radio because of the significant head issues that he had suffered through his career. So I know he would want me to say, don't overlook the issues that I think in many cases some say, oh, you've got the lawsuit that was out there and things that are kind of just, a background story now. With the movie came out, whatever. Don't overlook other struggles that guys go through just because, they signed up for it. Because I think beneath the surface, there's more of, they signed up to play football. Did they sign up knowing the issues that were truly at stake compared to what the league is doing now, which is everything they can to make it a safer sport? It's not a safe sport, a safer sport where guys aren't playing through a concussion and then doing it in the same game and having to get, extreme treatment and help following some of these matchups in the locker room.
And people can try to downplay it all they want, but guys of Frank's era truly did not understand the long-term ramifications of head injury the way we do now, or the way we're observant of it and look at it. And the league has changed for the better.
But even if they
for
did,
that
Chad,
reason, they didn't understand.
You do sometimes have to protect the player from the player.
Yes.
You do.
Yeah. And I don't think that was a thing then.
No.
I think if the player was, hey, I got to get back out there, coaches would let them go back out there, and that was just accepted and part of the game.
And keep in mind, too, it's not the superstar element of it that needs just needs protection. We protect the quarterbacks, right? Wycheck was a 6th-round pick in Washington, was released, picked up by Houston, never felt like he was safe on the roster.
No, and played that way.
And you felt like you had, if you're in that situation, there are guys in the situation right now, 70% of the league is probably feeling that way, where you don't know week to week if you're on the roster.
If I don't show up and work right now or play through this injury or this concussion or getting knocked out, I'm going to be replaced.
If I don't get out of this blue tent.
Yeah, I mean, and Frank was a guy, I'm going to have to go, sell insurance. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's what he's thinking. I'm not going to be able to play in the National Football League anymore if I don't gut it out and fight through this injury. And one thing on Frank as a player, he was ahead of his time as a player. He was more of a hybrid H-back pass catcher who could also block and did a ton of things for those Titans teams, those Oilers teams. He really was ahead of his time, and he was also a throwback with his mentality. So he's a guy that could have played in the 50s and 60s with his tough guy mentality, and Hutton, he's a guy that could play today because he is a hybrid-type pass catcher player and a good athlete. I think an underrated athlete in his time also.
Chad, I don't know if you remember this. he did a lot of charity work, philanthropy. He was very generous around the holidays, too, for coworkers or whatever. I don't know what type of freezer he thought I owned. He sent me so many Omaha steaks that I didn't have. I had a fridge in the garage and inside at the first house I had.
Yeah.
Did not have room for all of it. If I took everything out and cleaned it out, he had shipped all of this meat. I should have just told you to come pick it up.
Yeah, I would have eaten. We would have had
come
a
grab
party.
this.
I would have just come over Hutton. I know it's January right now. We're about to have a cookout.
I donated some of it locally, but I was like, I had a freezer full of just nothing but cut filet.
You can donate your meat to me anytime, Hutton.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Come check it out in the freezer.
I will accept that donation.
He's like, hey bud, you get the shipment? I'm like, yeah, I got the U-Haul that pulled up. You got the U-Haul that pulled up. Dropped it all off.
Well, R.I.P. Frank.
No doubt.
One of the best.
Hey, his family, Teddy, we're thinking about you, and all the lives that were impacted, friends of his, hang in there, because it was tough news to see over the weekend. Frank Wycheck, dead at the age of 52. Stay tuned. More coming. We have plenty to react to. We've got Juwan Howard that's in an altercation at Michigan. I want to know how the Wolverines will treat this versus how they've handled some things with Harbaugh, as well as, two Monday Night Football matchups that on paper in August looked okay. And now, we'll see if we get a close game in the fourth quarter that the NFL can brag about. Straight ahead, Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow across the OutKick Network.
Hey, here's a feel-good story. You ready? And this needs to be talked about more. You know, lost in all of the, hey man, inspire change, Whitey's bad of the NFL. There are folks in the NFL that are, great dudes. The Carolina Panthers have a player named Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst is doing something that everybody in sports should do. Yeah, I know everybody in sports should try to be a rapper. Yeah, I know, like Von Miller, everyone in sports should get their side piece to not frickin' talk about your indiscretions. Yeah, I know everybody in the NFL as a wide receiver has to act like a damn idiot. I get all that. I do, I swear. But Hayden Hurst, he ain't like that. Hayden Hurst is trying to shed light on veterans with suicide and suicide prevention. That's a good thing. No, it's a really good thing. Suicide's a major issue, and it's only going to get worse. I'm going to tell you right now, this is a separate issue, but lack of parenting. Do whatever you want leads to suicide. People want direction. People want purpose. People want guardrails. People don't want to be left free. They get depressed. They get depressed if you don't have anybody giving you direction. And that's the society of parents that we're living in. Suicide rates among teenagers are at all-time high, and I hate to say this, but they're only going to go higher. I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but that's what's going to happen. When you have a lack of parenting, when you let kids run free, drugs, alcohol, whatever they want in our current society are actually sometimes made available by idiot parents. I had a friend who let his kid drink in my house, and I'm like, you're an idiot. I love him. It's one of my best friends, but you're an idiot. It ain't cool. It ain't smart. It ain't fun. It's stupid. I can't even imagine my kids asking me to do that in our house. But anyway, that's parenting. That's where parenting is headed. But when you go overseas and you are in a war, and that war involves killing, you killing somebody, you seeing devastation, you seeing what a bomb can do to a town, the horrific things that our veterans have seen and had to do. Of course, that comes home with you. What do you think you do? You flip a switch, you come home, and you never think about it. Hell, I think about things that I did 10 years ago that weren't even bad. 20 years ago. Why did I do that? That's stupid. I mean, the only perfect people, as we know, are writers, media guys. They're the only ones. They're the only ones that are absolutely perfect. Even when they have affairs, even when they do stupid stuff, they write it off as, well, I was figuring life out. We, as the rest of us, don't have that same grace. and veterans come home and they're like, oh, man. Can you imagine? Let me just give you a scenario. Let's just say you are in charge of taking a hill and you and your guys gunned down 50 people. You think that just leaves you? You think that just goes away when you come back to a nation that hates you, that doesn't respect you, that doesn't help you, that treats illegal immigrants better than you? Hell no.
I'm out with Hutton with our rolls on across the OutKick network. 6th and Peabody, our location with EHOP Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Join us on YouTube. Search out OutKick. Subscribe there on the channel. You've got other options as well, outkick.com. Plus, you can listen to this great radio partner. We say thank you for that. How's the chat?
Chat's on fire.
Awesome. Good.
It's been good. Good participation today. Appreciate everyone tuning in and interacting with the show. We love interaction. So even if you've got something negative to say to me, bring it. You know, that's fine. We can handle it. We can get past it.
The Athletic, speaking of bring it, the Athletic has a report that while the extent of this altercation is not clear, various reports, and we're just reading from the Athletic, there's an incident that took place between Juwan Howard from Michigan and John Sanderson, the strength and conditioning coach. They had a confrontation at the end of last week. And for whatever reason, Michigan's not commenting. In fact, Ward Manuel, in a text to the Detroit Free Press, says, quote, "We have no comment." This is interesting because there are rumors beginning to swirl after their win over Iowa that Howard had this altercation on Friday with Sanderson, but he's not serving as the head coach yet this season because he's recovering from a heart issue.
He had an aortic aneurysm that was operated on September 15th. And this story's crazy. So Jalen Rose, responding, of course, a Fab Five member with Juwan Howard and a buddy and a Michigan guy, responds to a report about the fight and says, this isn't true. He's still recovering from open heart surgery and is targeting a December 16th return as head coach. He started joining the team on the bench as an observer at the Battle for Atlantis when they played Memphis. It's a very confusing story. So I'm to believe that Juwan Howard, while recovering from open heart surgery, got into a fist fight with a strength coach during a practice.
And then the strength coach was not in attendance.
Did not make
for
the
the
trip.
most recent game.
Yeah, did not make the trip in their most recent road trip.
And this is a coach who has had multiple physical and verbal altercations, and there is now a zero tolerance policy in his contract, right?
Stemming from him getting a 5-game suspension, 3 or 5, maybe 3, with Greg Gard last year at Wisconsin during the handshake line where they got into a fight. Look, certainly not out of character. When I see Juwan Howard got into a fist fight with a staffer, if I had to rank college basketball head coaches that this could happen to, he would be close to the top of the list. So that part doesn't surprise me.
And there was some fake account, too, that got in there.
Yeah, there was a fake John Rothstein account that initially did it.
Okay.
But to do it while recovering from heart surgery where you're not serving as the head coach, that part is odd.
Yes.
Michigan giving it, we have no comment, is a little bit odd. Also, I think about Ward Manuel and everything he's been dealing with, and then finding out about this. Like, just put yourself in Ward Manuel's office in Ann Arbor for a second. And you were dealing with the Big Ten office, your entire football coaching staff,
yes,
You're dealing with college football playoff committees.
A president that announces a contract extension before you find out about it on social media.
Your team is the number 1 seed in the college football playoff. You're trying to win a national championship. You've got the NCAA on campus investigating. You're talking with them.
You don't like the commissioner of the Big Ten.
You cancel one of your trips to the college football playoff committee because you got so much going on campus with the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And then you get a buzz that Ward, your head basketball coach recovering from heart surgery, may or may not have just punched the Olympic strength and conditioning coach on the team and they got into a fight.
And that guy's not on the trip now.
That guy's not, he's not going on the trip after that. I guess we'll wait to see what comes out of this.
But they're not commenting at all. Like, normally you say we're aware of the situation and we're looking
into it.
At least Central Michigan looked into the fact that there was an anonymous person on the sideline wearing sunglasses at night.
Never reported.
Yeah.
But do you think
it's not like the media's ever going to ask you if you conclude your investigation. You at least need to acknowledge that you have one.
Part of the deal could just be, what if Ward Manuel came back to the reporter and just said, look, guys, I barely know we have a basketball program
guys, we're
right now.
We're going to the college football playoff.
I'm worried about all of this. I feel like in the movie Along Came Polly when Philip Seymour Hoffman, when asked to get Ben Stiller asked him to switch men because the big sweaty, hairy, fat guy is getting sweat all over him. And Philip Seymour Hoffman's response to Ben Stiller's character was, I can't switch right now because I've just figured out how to cover this man. I know how to guard this man. I know his weaknesses and his strengths. So I can't get off. Do you think Ward Manuel comes back to the reporter and just says, I have to worry about this problem? We have this blazing inferno taking place around this beautiful diamond of a football program that is the best team in America right now, that's 2 wins away from capturing our first national title since we shared a title in 1997. So I will not comment on the basketball team. Barely knew they were playing games. What are they, 5-5? Great. Haven't seen a second of a Michigan basketball game this year. I think Phil Martelli is the interim coach. I don't know, but please leave me alone right now. That may have been the no comment.
That's a beta move as far as the no comment is concerned. But, Chad, in Alphas and Betas of the weekend, we start with Joe Flacco. I mentioned he's throwing the football way too much. Let me point this out because this is going to end in an injury. Joe Flacco has 89 pass attempts, 2 interceptions, 3 sacks in the last 2 weeks, but they're winning. I only point this out because I hope we're continuing this storyline a little bit further down the road as well. But, I mean, at 7-6, and you've got a mess in the AFC. Here's Cleveland and Joe Flacco stepping in at 38 years old, and well, he's revving up the Browns' offense. And paired with that defense, they're going to be in games in the fourth quarter where you can allow some of the receiving options to go to work, receivers and tight ends for that matter.
I think just the ability for him, this is what makes Joe Flacco an alpha. And I don't know how this thing's going to end, but it's off to a nice start for the Browns and Flacco.
They're now 8-5.
The fact that he kept himself in good enough shape, not playing on a team, to where you don't just go out there and immediately pull something, right? I mean, I think about this from my perspective. We're pretty close to a similar age. Now, I did not play professional football and wasn't playing it recently. But even just to keep yourself ready enough to know if I get that call, I still want to be an NFL quarterback. I can do this. In fact, he's putting the word out to the Jets brass. He's close by. Right, he's in southern New Jersey, I think is where he's living.
When we started the year last year.
Come on, let's do this thing. I'm ready. Zach Wilson's awful. I want to come play for you. And they don't give him a call.
Sorry, Joe, Aaron doesn't want you here.
Yeah, we asked Aaron, and he said no. Yep. But then you stay ready. You go to Cleveland. You do good things. Alpha move.
Yeah.
Good job for Joe Flacco.
The Cowboys, well, comfortable victory against Philadelphia. And they're on this run now where they control the NFC East. And, Chad, they can get the number 1 overall seed. They've got to continue on the path they're on. When they play at home, they turn it up. But San Francisco, with that head-to-head win, could come back to haunt them whenever we actually reach the first weekend of January and they finally get to the end of the regular season and we crank things up for Wild Card Weekend. Either way, they're in a great spot, and they have handled their business as of late.
Next alpha, not an alpha in my opinion, but an alpha performance, Zach Wilson. Talk about getting up off the mat. Guy is terrible. gets benched, got benched a year ago also.
Yeah.
Reports come out that when they go back to him to be the starter again, that he didn't even want to play or was considering not playing. Robert Saleh says not true, that he's ready to go. He goes out there against the Houston Texans. He looks like a good NFL quarterback. It's amazing.
Interesting what Rodgers does when he's back.
We may look back years from now and say, hey, remember that one game that Zach Wilson played where he looked like a pro quarterback? That was something,
Maybe
wasn't
he'll be
it?
a backup and not a third string this year.
The way he's played this year, I've even asked the question, should he be on a roster, much less starting quarterback in the NFL? Whose spot is he taking up? Is there another quarterback? I don't know, like a Joe Flacco that was on the couch at the time that should be on a roster somewhere. Hey, credit where credit's due. Alpha performance of getting off the mat and looking good for one Sunday for Zach Wilson.
Betas. Patrick Mahomes. I don't know. Have we had him on this list ever?
No.
No. But the response.
First time beta list member.
The response.
Not like the beta club in high school either. That's
Okay.
the worst list. You want to make the beta club. You don't want to be on the beta
Just
list.
so you can go to the convention.
Yes. And pick up girls.
Very poor club name. Should have thought twice about that.
They
Jeff.
should have.
For Mahomes,
let's start the Alpha Club.
Think twice about ripping into that call, saying that it was obvious that Toney's not in the neutral zone or offside, because he was. He had to come back and say, well, maybe, whatever. And then to be as irate as you, I don't know, have we ever seen Mahomes that angry?
No.
Over something that was, if you're just going by the rule, that's a flag. And in that moment, Mahomes became, not just that moment. The last few weeks, the Kansas City Chiefs have turned into a lot of the teams across the league. Good, not great.
Yeah. The altercation with Max Crosby a year ago, he got pretty fired up.
That's good, yeah.
Nothing like that where he's going after
I don't mind that with
and,
Crosby, though, because Crosby wants that.
Yeah, chucking his helmet to that extent, just losing his mind. Beta, how about a 3-0 game between the Vikings and the Raiders? I'm watching Red Zone, Hutton, and out of morbid curiosity, I'm just praying they go back to show that game to see if anyone was going to get some first downs and get in field goal range. Finally, Nick Mullins enters for Joshua Dobbs, gets the Vikings in field goal range. They win it with a field goal, but still a beta game.
In the spirit of Red Zone, though, can you actually go back to that game? In the spirit of what that represents to you?
Can I go back to the watching the game?
No, can they actually show the game?
Oh, no, yeah. They would just go occasionally like at midfield. I think in a game that's scoreless that late in the game, when you enter close to the 50, they go back and show it.
The Big Ten West exists in the NFL, not just with one example, but two. You can also look at the Texans and what they were doing, where the Texans and Jets at the half, 11 drives, 11 punts.
Not good. Finally, our final beta of the week, and I'll get into this because I don't know that Hutton has seen it yet. ESPN for their 30 for 30. And they've had some really good ones that have followed the Heisman Trophy ceremony. I think this was one of their worst. And it was a subject matter I was very interested in watching. It was about the race for the 97 Heisman that ended up with Charles Woodson winning it from Michigan, Peyton Manning finishing second, and then Ryan Leaf and Randy Moss. 3 of those 4 players went on to be Pro Football Hall of Famers. The 4th went on to be a weekly guest right here on OutKick Hot Mic in Ryan Leaf. It was interesting to watch, but the way this thing was done, they had no firsthand accounts. They had no one on screen being interviewed. It was just footage. It was the individual schools' video footage. It was people camping out for games. It was a lot of ESPN footage at the time and coverage, and it would just splice from one to the other. So while that kept going fast and made it more of a fast-paced watch, I think that ESPN, and understandably so from this perspective, avoided the biggest issues here. And that is that they helped Charles Woodson win the Heisman in a big way with the way they changed the narrative and the perspective and the argument really after Peyton Manning lost to Florida and did not win that game. But as Peyton Manning's stats got better and better throughout the year, there was this idea that is anyone going to catch him? Even going into the season, he's the clear-cut front runner to win the Heisman. And then when that narrative changed, ESPN really fed into it. Also, no marks to ESPN for not including the fact that Chris Fowler brought a lot of this on ESPN when he referred to a trailer park frenzy of Tennessee fans that were upset about it. Do you want to know why Tennessee fans, and at the time, honestly, SEC fans, not anymore because now ESPN is the SEC network, but SEC fans had a problem with ESPN? It was because of a statement like that, calling it a trailer park frenzy when Tennessee fans were upset that Peyton Manning did not win the Heisman Trophy. I know that happened after, and that's why College Game Day didn't go to Tennessee, Florida in 98,
right?
Because of supposed threats that Chris Fowler was facing for saying something like that. But come on, you got to include that part also. I thought there was a lot more that could have been uncovered, and you've got Peyton Manning on the payroll.
Well, they used to have all these guys on the payroll.
You've got
at one point,
Randy
right?
Moss on the payroll right now. Charles Woodson, is he still with them?
I don't know. I don't think so, but maybe I'm dead wrong on that. But I mean, Leaf was, but now he's doing Westwood 1.
Yeah. So point being, I just think they could have done a lot better with a rich subject matter like the 97 Heisman race.
Yes, that is perfect for 30 for 30. That doesn't feel like a 30 for 30 description to me.
And it was really just a creative choice of not having any testimonials or interviews on camera, just straight old footage from 97. I thought it was a swing.
Did they have some of the voters who said they went with Woodson over Manning and why?
They had no one on camera. It was just people on ESPN and on networks at the time. They had like random, like student TV shows at Tennessee and Michigan talking about it on camera from 97.
Yeah. Thank you, Chad. I will not be watching this.
You're welcome.
Coming up.
Just saved you an hour.
2 games tonight across the NFL.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. that was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of a Southern legend.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us for Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow here on the OutKick Network. Been a fun show today, fast-paced. That's our goal.
Fast-paced show.
Get you into the week, recapping the weekend, and we're going to get you through the week as fast as possible. Guaranteed.
Do you think that it went as fast for our crew in here as it did for us today, the 3 hours?
I don't know.
We'll have to ask him.
Davey, probably so, yes.
Davey feels like he's still got some energy left, ready to go.
Yeah, always. Yeah, I think it went by fast.
We'll poll
I
the
think this is
studio
a
when
fast
we're
show
done.
for them, too. I do.
We'll share the poll results in the YouTube chat tomorrow to start the show.
I don't know. There you go. I don't know if it was a fast or a slow evening or what it was, because it was all a blur, at least for me. I know it was for the very happy couple, my sister and her husband, Amy and Alex, who welcomed in a daughter to the family, the lovely and beautiful and perfect Victoria Lee Ropp. Congratulations, Amy and Alex, on Victoria.
Congratulations, Amy and Alex. I will say, put that picture back up there if you will, please, because I want to point something out. That is a perfect-looking child. Almost looks fake. It's so perfect. Beautiful, beautiful baby girl. Uncle Hutton has a nice ring to it. So congratulations on being an uncle. Uncle Hut. Uncle John, Uncle Jonathan. I don't know
they have said
what
they
she's going to call you, but
they've told me that she, don't expect her to be able to say Jonathan. I said she can call me whatever she wants. It's fine.
I think Uncle Hut has a nice ring to it. Uncle Hut. Crazy Uncle Hutton, It all looks good.
It's all good. It's all good.
Good to see that mother and baby are doing well, and congratulations to the happy couple.
Yes.
And Uncle Hut's going to spoil that.
Yes.
He's going to spoil
That's
his
right.
niece now.
Congratulations, guys. Love you guys, and see you soon. It'll be a great Christmas, no doubt, and glad everyone is happy and healthy for sure. Chad, happy and healthy is not the NFL currently. A lot of injuries. Will Levis is currently the quarterback of the Tennessee Titans because, Ryan Tannehill got hurt, and then they just decided, we're going to play the second-round pick that the organization traded up for. Got to find out if he's the guy because the team sucks. They're not admitting that, but watch them play. They don't play well on a consistent basis. They go 3 and out a lot. The league does too. That's the trend. 16 of the 32 teams under 500. Tennessee's one of them. Miami is not. That's one of the Monday Night Football games this evening. The other, we can also look across and watch the New York Giants take on the Green Bay Packers, who have turned into a very interesting storyline in the NFC North. With Jordan Love and the run that they've been on, trying to finally connecting on some consistency.
This is my eliminator pick, by the way,
play
this week. Packers.
Oh, you can win it, right? Or did Davey also win? Did Davey win the elimination pick?
This week?
I lost.
Yeah, I had San Francisco, so we're good.
I lost mine.
So you're out?
I had Houston. Yeah, I believe I'm out. Houston has screwed me twice. I picked them against the Falcons, and I picked them against the Jets, and I lost both of those. C.J. Stroud has been amazing, but he lost to the Falcons and the Jets.
Well, obviously, Davey wins
Game was-
the elimination game if the
you
Packers
lose?
don't win tonight.
I'm really
Well,
just
have you lost twice? Or this will be your
once.
second? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah.
So, come on, Chad. Stay in this.
If the Giants win and the Titans lose, the Titans would be in line for a top 5 pick.
So here's what the best case scenario is for the Titans moving forward. Lose every game in a shootout. Show that Will Levis
can't
is
do
the
that.
guy. Score a bunch of points. Have Will Levis look good. But lose every game to ensure yourself of a top 5 pick. Because this is a team and a franchise that badly needs a Marvin Harrison Jr. type star playmaker that can get things going offensively. That's what I think they need. They're not going to try to lose. We all understand that. That's not in Mike
the head
Vrabel's
coach
DNA.
will not do. You're right.
He
Will
won't
not do
allow
that.
it. I don't think the players will. I'm just telling you, outsider's perspective, best case scenario is they lose out, get a top 5 pick, draft Marvin Harrison Jr., and they know Will Levis is the guy after this year, based on even all the losses, the way he looks.
Yeah.
Hutton, I don't think they're going to score many points, though. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's been a grind for this offense. And it's been awful for this offense, and it has been great for Miami. This is the ESPN game. You also have on ABC Green Bay taking on New York. Jordan Love against Tommy DeVito, who comes out to the Sopranos theme. You know, he's even got the gimmick going where he's got this, the sign for the and hey, he's got a beer named after him now. You want to see what the guy's got? This Tommy DeVito. They've got Tyrod Taylor back, and they're sticking with Tommy DeVito.
Tommy Cutlets to Tommy Touchdown. The
You'd be what, the
5.1%
underdog story.
Italian Pilsner.
Yeah, the season looking grim. The Jersey guy stepped in and breathed some life into the season. Celebrate our hometown hero with this local brew in the tap room, in the comfort of your own home as well.
I love the hand signal also on the can. I would love to see Tommy DeVito be a long-term option to be the New York Giants quarterback. Don't see that happening. But this is the type of story to get behind. Guy in Jersey playing for the Giants, that's Tommy DeVito. If he could win that job permanently, would be amazing. Don't see it happening.
Yeah, but I can see the Giants winning tonight. Let me say that. Look at the games this weekend. I need to learn my lesson on this. Just when you think the Chicago Bears are, trying to get the first and second overall pick, they're putting together and stringing together some scoring drives and looking okay. They're looking like an average team instead of the worst team. They mentioned that they're even considering building the new stadium in the parking lot of Soldier Field. Now all of a sudden it's great. They're playing like they should with Justin Fields at quarterback. Meanwhile, Chad, Green Bay, they can take over and be that playoff team. Love's been really good lately.
One of the two big surprises within that division, what the Vikings have now become is not a surprise without Kirk Cousins and without Justin Jefferson.
Yep.
The Packers' ascent is surprising to me in the way Jordan Love has looked, and the Lions falling apart defensively. Now look good. Dan Campbell saying, I need to be more of an irritant to this team, and I can do that, and I'm going to start doing that. I need to be a little bit more hardcore with them, apparently.
Yeah.
I didn't see the Lions. Not that they've fallen apart, but they've lost 2 of their last 3, and it should have been. It wasn't good.
They should have lost
3.
Or could have lost 3 of the last 4.
They were down 2 scores with 4 minutes
and
left,
came
3
back to
minutes
beat
left.
The Bears.
Yeah.
And if not for that, it would have been 3 of the last 4. But they've lost 2 of the last 3, and it is they seem like they've lost their way a bit. The losses by Philly, referencing that, or the losses by San Francisco. Because if you're doing the tiers in the NFC, in whatever order, there are 3 teams: Cowboys, Eagles, 49ers. Rewind 4 weeks, and the Lions are in this discussion.
Yeah.
But they feel like they've fallen out of the discussion because of how they've looked and how they've lost. Not if you lose, it's how you lose. And I can look at Philly and know
who you've lost to.
And who you have, right? And Goff has not been the same quarterback the way he started the season compared to now. And who you've lost to factors into, absolutely. The knock on the Dolphins all year is they've been losing to good teams. They haven't beaten premium opponents.
They won't get a chance to do that tonight either.
No. You have Tennessee, then you take on the Jets. But they closed the season against 3 top 10 teams. You have Baltimore, and that is week 17. And that could determine the number 1 seed in the AFC. That sets up a really interesting game in Week 17. This week, by the way, you have Buffalo taking on Dallas. Not bad.
I'm curious to see what that flex Sunday Night Football game will end up being in the final week of the season.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if because they can flex. Can't they flex Thursday too, or no?
Not. Well, there is no Thursday. The final week.
Well, but of the next 4 games, can't they flex 2 games? The NFL.
I believe that is correct. I do know for Week 18, the big thing that they'll typically do is they look to flex onto Saturday, where games have multiple playoff implications.
You know, if you're a team, though, they've announced who those games are. I think when the schedule's announced, you know if you're eligible to be flexed to Saturday because they want to move around that Sunday matchup too. Dolphins, Chad, they've beaten the Broncos by 50. They beat the Commanders by 30.
I love how nonchalant you said that. Beat the Broncos by 50.
And now look at the Broncos, crazy. Broncos by 50, Commanders by 30, Giants by 16. They beat the Panthers and the Jets by 21 points. And here come the Titans, who have not scored 30 points in 30 games or something?
Since I think it's longer than that.
2004.
Yeah. And they don't have Jeffrey Simmons tonight.
This feels like a good time to take the Dolphins minus 14, is what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I would do. I mean, one of these games is going to be crazy. So why not just go with Tommy DeVito?
Tyreek Hill is 519 yards away from reaching 2,000. I would say he gets at least 150 tonight.
In the first half?
If we can have crazy things happen in a Heisman Trophy ceremony occasionally, the 97 Charles Woodson thing, a good example. Why not give the MVP award to a receiver? And if so, wouldn't this be the year?
You say that, but I mean, Cooper Kupp had the Triple Crown.
The problem is Dak Prescott's doing something too.
Yeah, he
didn't even really get mentioned for the MVP.
Cooper Kupp, yeah.
You have a 2,000-yard rusher and you can't get the MVP. But would the first ever 2,000-yard receiver get it?
If he does it before the 17th game.
Yeah, potentially. But he's not getting that. The Dolphins are being crushed for beating bad teams and not beating good teams. That will be held against Tyreek Hill. It shouldn't.
How many yards is he away, Davey?
519.
And
does he get there tonight against Christian Fulton?
Well, Fulton's got a hammy.
Oh.
I mean, it's going to be
Does he get there tonight against Christian Fulton's backup? That's the question.
So
that's a real challenge. You want to be challenged, Tyreek? Try to get there tonight.
I say, why not take the Giants? I raise my hand and say, the Packers, top 10 scoring defense. They have reached their the top offensive yardage, the high water marks over the 5 weeks. Those have been the 5 biggest outputs, and they're on a 3-game run. 2 of those being division leaders that they've knocked off. But there's always Tommy DeVito and craziness. And this is the ABC game, and they're going to prop it up as the best game. I bet it's close. And let me throw this out there, too. Matt LaFleur has never lost a game as a head coach in December, Chad.
That's
Give me
crazy.
your anytime touchdown.
Devin Achane. I'm going to go with him with the Dolphins, also selfishly for fantasy football purposes.
Okay.
I hope that happens. Hey, quick breaking news before we get out.
Yes, good.
This from The Athletic. Shohei Ohtani, help me with this, guys, will defer $68 million of his $70 million annually per year over the course of the 10-year contract, which will allow the Dodgers to keep spending.
So they're going to pay him after his career.
So he's going to be Bobby Bonilla?
Yes, so they can continue to put all-star talent around him while he's playing.
So he'll make $2 million a year of a $70 million contract until he's done playing, and then they're going to pay him all of that money after that.
They would have to. It's fully guaranteed.
Yeah.
But is it one lump sum? How are they going to pay this out?
He will defer $68 million per year of a $70 million annually.
It's a lot. The only thing I could think of is he's racking in a ton in
endorsements. Shaquille O'Neal never cashed a check or never used money that he earned from his salary. He only spent money in the NBA from his endorsements. I believe I've got that right.
Alvin Kamara does a similar thing.
The deferred money will be paid out without interest from 2034 to 2043 after the contract's over. So then they'll pay it 10 years after when he's no longer playing.
What a league. What a league.
That is. You shouldn't be able to do that, in my opinion.
I agree, Davey. I think that's just skirting the rules in an unfair way. If you're doing that, that's odd to me.
I know we're up against.
I mean, great for him that he was willing to do that and able to help them buy better players around him also. But that just doesn't feel right.
I don't have the 8 teams in front of me, but his $70 million a year is higher than the payroll of 8 teams in the league.
Wow.
Higher than some of the teams going for the World Series?
Possibly.
Higher than the Orioles?
I'm going to guess the Kansas City Royals. We can probably all name the teams that they're ahead of. The Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah.
Higher payroll than them. Maybe not anymore, but at one point, definitely the Baltimore Orioles.
Higher than Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay, Baltimore, Oakland. There you go. Yeah.
Now Vegas. Soon to be Vegas.
Enjoy Monday Night Football and the 2 games. Hopefully we get some tight ones. We'll discuss it tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern.